Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into a realm where mountains whisper secrets and the very stars hum with ancient power. Imagine, if you will, standing at the precipice of existence itself, before time had a name, before light knew shadow. You feel the cool, swirling currents of nothingness brush against your skin, a vast, formless expanse stretching out infinitely in every direction. There's a faint, resonant hum, a vibration that hints at something immense, something truly cosmic, waiting just beyond your perception. You try to grasp it, to define it, but it slips through your fingers like smoke. This isn't just a story. It's the primordial heartbeat of everything you've ever known. A wild, untamed canvas upon which gods would paint their epic sagas and mortals would strive, suffer, and sometimes even triumph. Honestly, you probably won't survive this journey unscathed, at least not metaphorically speaking. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself adrift in chaos, an infinite void, the first state of existence. It's not just empty space. It's a swirling, formless chasm, a boundless entity from which all else would eventually spring forth. Think of it as the ultimate cosmic soup, simmering with latent potential. From this primordial soup, without any divine intervention or master plan, the first beings simply emerge. You watch as Gaia, the earth, solidifies beneath your feet, a vast, nurturing presence, the very ground you stand on. She's not just dirt and rocks. She's a living, breathing entity, a fundamental force. Alongside her, Tartarus material, the deepest abyss, a chasm beneath even the underworld, where the worst offenders will eventually be imprisoned. You feel a shiver, a natural human instinct to recoil from such an inescapable dark. And then there's Eros, not the cute chubby Cupid you might imagine, but a primal force of procreation, desire, and attraction, the very urge that brings things together. Without Eros, nothing would ever couple, nothing would ever multiply. Finally, Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, and Nyx, the night, complete this initial quintet. These aren't gods in the traditional sense yet, more like fundamental concepts given form. Gaia, the earth, feeling a profound sense of loneliness. In this vast, formless existence, yearns for companionship and for children. She births Uranus, the sky, simply by willing him into being. You watch as he arches over her, a vast, star-studded dome, a perfect celestial partner. Together, Gaia and Uranus become the first true cosmic couple, and from their union, the first generation of powerful beings are born. You witness the arrival of the Cyclopes, three colossal giants with a single searing eye in the center of their foreheads. Brontes, thunder, stirrups, lightning, and Argus bright. You can almost feel the ground tremble with their birth, their immense power resonating through the nascent cosmos. Then come the Hecatoncheires, the hundred-handed ones, Catus, Briareus, and Gyes. Imagine beings with 50 heads and 100 arms each, incredibly strong, a truly unsettling sight. These children are monstrous in appearance, possessing immense raw power, and Uranus, their father, is immediately disgusted by them. He sees their grotesque forms and fears their strength, so he cruelly shoves them back into Gaia's womb, trapping them within her, deep inside the earth. You hear Gaia's groans, a deep, sorrowful tremor that shakes your very core. She's in immense pain, her maternal love turning to bitter resentment. But the story doesn't stop there. Gaia and Uranus continue to procreate, and a new generation emerges, the Titans. These are the 12 powerful, regal beings who are destined to rule the cosmos for an age. You see them appear, Oceanus and Tethys, masters of the oceans. Hyperion and Theia, personifications of light and sight. Zeus and Phoebe, associated with intellect and prophecy. Mnemosyne, goddess of memory, you might want to take notes, she's important later. Themis, goddess of divine law and justice. Crius, a more obscure titan of constellations. Iapetus, who would become the father of Prometheus. And finally, the most famous or infamous of them all, Kronos and Rhea. These titans are not as monstrous as their elder siblings. They are majestic, powerful, and largely humanoid in form, though radiating immense ancient energy. Ouranos, despite his earlier cruelty, allows these new children to roam freely, enjoying his dominance over the cosmos. However, his tyranny isn't over. He continues his pattern of fear and oppression, consistently hindering Gaia's children. He never allows them to see the light of day, fearing that one of them will one day usurp his power. You can feel the tension building, the resentment festering beneath the surface of the world. Gaia, still suffering from the imprisonment of her firstborn, reaches her breaking point. She quietly conspires with her children, the Titans, seeking revenge on their oppressive father. She appeals to them, asking if any of them are brave enough to stand against Uranus. Imagine the silence that follows, the weight of their father's immense power hanging in the air. Most of them are too terrified, too awed by Uranus's might. But not all. Kronos, the youngest and most ambitious of the male titans, steps forward. He's a cunning and ruthless figure, a titan of time, and he harbors a deep resentment for his father's cruelty. Gaia provides him with a flint sickle, a sharp, deadly weapon, and instructs him on how to ambush Uranus. You can almost hear the whispered plans, the clandestine meetings in the dim corners of the nascent universe. One night, as Uranus descends to couple with Gaia, Kronos, hidden in the shadows, ambushes him. With a swift, brutal motion, Kronos castrates his father. You wince, feeling a phantom pain. It's a truly shocking act of violence, a testament to the brutal nature of these early myths. From the severed body parts of Uranus, as they fall into the sea, new beings arise. From the blood that splatters upon Gaia, the Erinyes Furies are born vengeful goddesses who punish patricide and oath-breaking, their presence a chilling promise of retribution. Also born from Uranus's blood are the giants, colossal beings of immense strength, and the Malaya ash tree nymphs, and from the foam that gathers around Uranus's genitals in the sea, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation, emerges. You can practically smell the salt and feel the soft spray as she rises from the waves. Fully formed and breathtakingly beautiful, an unlikely byproduct of such a horrific act. Historians still argue whether the castration myth symbolizes the separation of heaven and earth, allowing space for creation, or simply a primitive explanation for natural phenomena. With Uranus vanquished and banished, Kronos assumes leadership of the Titans. This marks the beginning of the Golden Age, a period often described as a time of peace and prosperity. You imagine a world where mortals, who are yet to be created, would theoretically live in harmony, without labor or strife. However, Kronos, despite freeing his siblings from Uranus's tyranny, inherits his father's paranoia. He fears a prophecy, much like his father, that one of his own children will eventually overthrow him. This fear, this deep-seated insecurity, becomes the defining characteristic of his reign. You can see the dark clouds gathering even during this so-called Golden Age. Kronos marries his sister, Rhea, a gentle and nurturing Titaness. As Rhea gives birth to their children, Kronos, consumed by his fear, commits an unspeakable act. You watch, horrified, as he swallows each of his newborn infants whole, one by one, immediately after their birth. First Hestia, goddess of the hearth, then Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Next, Hera, queen of the gods, then Hades, lord of the underworld, and finally, Poseidon, god of the sea. You feel a profound sense of helplessness as you witness this. Cyclical horror, the pattern of abuse and fear being perpetuated across generations. Rhea, devastated by the loss of her children, grieves deeply. She is a picture of sorrow and desperation, yearning for her offspring, a quirky tidbit often overlooked in the grand narratives. Some lesser-known myths suggest that Kronos didn't just swallow his children because he was a paranoid tyrant, but because he was literally consuming time itself, embodying his role as the personification of time. Every second that passed, every generation born, was just another morsel for him to devour, ensuring his eternal, unchanging reign. This detail adds a fascinating layer to his character, transforming him from a mere villain into a force of nature. Rhea, desperate to save at least one of her children from Kronos' insatiable hunger, consults with her parents, Gaia and Uranus, who, even in his banished state, still has some prophetic abilities. They advise her to hide her next child. When she gives birth to her sixth child, Zeus, on the island of Crete, she tricks Kronos. She wraps a stone in swaddling clothes and presents it to him. You watch as Kronos, none the wiser, swallows the stone, believing he has consumed his final threat. Rhea, with immense relief and a glimmer of hope, then secretly takes the infant Zeus to a cave on Mount Ida, where he is raised in secret. He's nursed by the goat Amalthea and protected by the Caretes, dancing, shouting, armed guards who clanged their spears and shields together to mask the baby's cries from Kronos. You can practically hear the rhythmic clang of their weapons, a lullaby of defiance for the future king of the gods. This act of deception sets the stage for the next great cosmic conflict, a struggle that will define the very fabric of the universe. The hidden birth of Zeus is the ultimate act of defiance, a quiet rebellion that will eventually shatter the established order of the Titans. So, young Zeus is growing up in secret, far from the watchful, paranoid eye of his father, Kronos. You picture him on Crete, a sturdy, adventurous boy, unaware of his divine lineage for a time, perhaps thinking his clanging, dancing guardians are just a very enthusiastic, very loud babysitting service. Meanwhile, Kronos continues his reign, oblivious to the fact that the prophecy he so desperately feared is silently nurturing itself on a hidden island. He believes he's triumphed, that he's outsmarted fate, swallowing the stone with a smug, self-satisfied rumble. Ah, the sweet taste of hubris, right? The golden age under Kronos is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? While some myths paint it as a time without human strife or the need for labor, for the divine family, it's anything but golden. You feel the heavy, oppressive silence of Rhea's grief, the constant hum of Kronos' paranoia. He rules with an iron fist, asserting his dominance over the other Titans, maintaining a tight tyrannical grip on the cosmos. He's the ultimate control freak, meticulously orchestrating every aspect of his domain, ensuring no threat, real or imagined, can rise against him. He's like that one boss who micromanages every single detail, down to the last paperclip, just to make sure you're not secretly plotting their downfall. As Zeus matures into a strong, cunning young god, Rhea, his mother, reveals the truth of his birth and Kronos' terrible deeds. You imagine the shock and fury that must ripple through him. Imagine finding out your dad literally ate your siblings. It's enough to make anyone want to stage a hostile takeover. Fueled by righteous anger and a burning desire for justice, Zeus vows to free his swallowed siblings and overthrow his tyrannical father. This isn't just a personal vendetta. It's a cosmic liberation movement, with the guidance of his grandmother, Gaia, and perhaps even some whispers from the banished Uranus. Zeus devises a plan. He approaches Metis, an oceanid nymph of wisdom and cunning, who gives him a powerful emetic potion. You can almost see him, disguised, perhaps as a cupbearer, serving his unsuspecting father. He then slips the potion into Kronos' drink. Kronos, feeling unwell, begins to vomit. And what he vomits up is not just the stone he swallowed, but, one by one, all of Zeus's siblings, grown to full maturity inside their father's belly. You witness the miraculous sight. First Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades, and finally Poseidon, emerging, fully formed. Undoubtedly a little confused, and probably quite annoyed about their cramped, stomach acid-filled childhoods. Talk about a dramatic family reunion. The newly freed siblings, understandably, are not too keen on their father. They immediately join forces with Zeus, recognizing him as their liberator and natural leader. This alliance marks the formation of the Olympians, the core pantheon who will eventually take their rightful place on Mount Olympus. But it's not just the 6 siblings. Other deities and forces also align themselves with Zeus. Prominent among these allies are some of Kronos' own Titan siblings and offspring who saw the writing on the wall or simply abhorred his tyranny. Themis, the Titaness of divine law and justice, and her daughter Dike. Justice sided with Zeus, embodying the moral righteousness of his cause. Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory, also joined the Olympians, ensuring the history of this cosmic struggle would be remembered. Perhaps the most significant additions were Prometheus, Epimetheus, and Atlas, sons of the Titan Iapetus. Prometheus, known for his foresight, understood that Zeus was destined to win and wisely chose his side. Epimetheus, his brother, often thought of as hindsight, also joined them. And Atlas, a powerful general among the Titans, initially fought for Kronos, but as we'll see, his fate would be intrinsically tied to this war. This alignment of forces, some motivated by justice, others by shrewd foresight, created two formidable, opposing factions: the Titans, led by Kronos, who were mostly united by their fear of change and their established power, and the Olympians, led by Zeus, driven by a desire for a new order and the liberation of their trapped siblings. You can feel the cosmic tension building, a silent hum before the storm. Now, for a quick cultural detour. The idea of a divine struggle, where a younger generation of gods overthrows an older, more primordial set, isn't unique to Greek mythology. Many ancient cultures, from the Mesopotamian Enuma Elish to the Hurrian Kumarbi cycle, feature similar narratives of succession myths. It's a mainstream historical fact that these patterns appear globally, reflecting universal themes of generational change and the establishment of new orders. Historians still argue whether these parallels suggest cultural diffusion or independent development based on common human experiences. It's a bit like asking if everyone invents the wheel because it's a good idea, or because they saw someone else doing it, right? The stage is set for the epic conflict known as the Titanomachy, the Great War of the Gods. This wasn't a skirmish. It was a decade-long cosmic war, a clash of unimaginable power that literally shook the foundations of the universe. You imagine the sheer scale of it: mountains crumbling, oceans boiling, the very fabric of reality straining under the immense forces unleashed. The war wasn't fought with swords and arrows in the conventional sense, but with raw divine power, lightning bolts, earthquakes, storms, and floods. The Olympians established their stronghold on Mount Olympus, a towering peak that pierced the heavens, a fortress high above the mortal world. You can practically feel the crisp, cool air at its summit, surveying the vast battleground below. The Titans, conversely, held their ground on Mount Othrys, a formidable mountain range to the south. These two peaks became the command centers, the strategic heart of each side. The fighting was relentless and brutal. Zeus, armed with his formidable thunderbolts, a weapon given to him by the Cyclopes, whom he freed from Tartarus in exchange for their loyalty, was an unstoppable force. He hurled bolts of pure energy, shattering mountains and turning the sky into a maelstrom of light and sound. Poseidon, wielding his powerful trident, could command the seas, stirring up devastating storms and causing earthquakes that ripped the land apart. Hades, though he would later govern the underworld, also proved a powerful ally, possibly even wielding a helmet of invisibility. Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, though perhaps less directly involved in the physical combat, lent their divine essence and strategic support. On the other side, Kronos, still powerful and desperate to maintain his reign, led the charge for the Titans. Atlas, a general of immense strength, stood at the forefront, bearing the weight of battle on his colossal shoulders. The other Titans, though individually powerful, lacked the unified leadership and the strategic brilliance that Zeus provided. They were, in essence, an older, less adaptable force facing a younger, more dynamic rebellion. Think of it like an old-school empire, trying to fight a guerrilla uprising armed with cutting-edge technology, except here. The technology is literally cosmic power. The war dragged on, a stalemate of epic proportions, for 10 long years. You can almost hear the endless roar of divine power, the clash of cosmic wills. The earth groaned under the strain. The heavens wept with perpetual storms. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. The Titans were ancient and resilient, deeply rooted in the primordial essence of the cosmos. The Olympians, while younger, were driven by fierce determination and Zeus's innovative tactics. It was then that Zeus, remembering the advice of Gaia, made a crucial strategic move. He descended into Tartarus, the deepest abyss, to release the very first children of Gaia and Uranus, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires. You remember them, don't you? The monstrous, hundred-handed beings whom Uranus had imprisoned. This was a stroke of genius, or perhaps desperation, on Zeus's part. He understood that raw power alone wouldn't win the war. He needed overwhelming force, and these primordial giants were precisely that. Upon their release, the Cyclopes, grateful to Zeus for freeing them from their eternal prison, pledged their loyalty, and they were master craftsmen. To Zeus, they gifted the thunderbolts, forged from celestial fire and raw energy, turning him into the undisputed master of the sky. To Poseidon, they fashioned the trident, a weapon that could shake the earth and summon the might of the oceans. And to Hades, they crafted the helm of darkness, a magical helmet that rendered its wearer invisible. These divine artifacts were game-changers, tipping the balance of power decisively in favor of the Olympians. It's like bringing in a secret weapon that no one else even knew existed. The Hecatoncheires, with their 50 heads and 100 arms each, were an even more fearsome addition to the Olympian forces. Imagine them, each arm capable of wielding immense power, hurling colossal boulders with blinding speed and accuracy. They rained down mountainsides upon the Titans, creating an unstoppable barrage. The sheer volume of their attack was overwhelming, burying the Titan's stronghold under an avalanche of stone and divine energy. It was pure, unadulterated chaos, but chaos directed with purpose. This new, overwhelming force broke the stalemate. The Titans, despite their immense power and stubborn resistance, simply couldn't withstand the combined might of Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, Hades' invisibility, and the relentless assault of the Hecatoncheires. The tide of the war turned swiftly and dramatically. You can feel the shift, the sense of inevitability as the older order begins to crumble. The final battles were cataclysmic. Zeus unleashed a barrage of thunderbolts that lit up the entire cosmos, shaking it to its very core. The earth screamed, the seas roared, and the sky turned into a canvas of blinding light and deafening thunder. Kronos, despite his ferocity, was ultimately no match for his son's newfound power and the combined might of the liberated beings. The sheer force of the Olympian assault was simply too much. The great war of the gods, the Titanomachy, reaches its shattering climax. You are there, a silent observer amidst the cosmic storm, feeling the very fabric of existence warp and groan under the immense pressure. The air crackles with divine energy. The sky, a kaleidoscope of lightning, and the ground beneath you trembles, as if in perpetual earthquake. This isn't just a battle, it's a universe-defining struggle for supremacy, an event so monumental that its echoes would ripple through all of eternity. Zeus, empowered by the thunderbolts, forged by the Cyclopes, becomes a living tempest. You watch, in awe, as he unleashes a continuous barrage of celestial fire, each bolt a searing spear of light and sound, striking Mount Othrys with devastating precision. Imagine the sound not just thunder, but the very scream of the cosmos, the shattering of primordial rock, the roar of immense power unleashed. Kronos, despite his ancient strength and his desperate struggle to maintain control, finds himself overwhelmed. He is a formidable opponent, still embodying the relentless march of time, but even time itself can be undone by the force of pure, focused rebellion. The Hecatoncheires, with their 100 arms, proved to be the ultimate weapon. You see them, a blur of motion, tearing massive chunks from the mountains and hurling them at the Titan forces. It's like a cosmic artillery barrage, but instead of shells, they're launching entire peaks. The sheer volume and relentless nature of their assault are unbearable. The Titans, powerful as they are simply buried under an avalanche of stone and divine energy. It's not a fair fight anymore. It's an overwhelming show of force, a calculated demolition of the old order. The Titans are no match for this unified, technologically superior in a mythological sense Olympian force. Their ancient power, once unshakable, now seems slow and ponderous against the swift, decisive strikes of Zeus and his allies. The battle is a maelstrom of light, sound, and raw, unrestrained energy. Mountains are rent asunder, seas boil, and the sky itself seems to rip open. It's a primal, terrifying spectacle, but also one of profound significance, marking the end of one age and the violent birth of another. Finally, after 10 grueling years of incessant warfare, the Olympians achieve victory. The Titans are defeated. You witness the moment of their surrender, not with a white flag, but with the weary collapse of immense power, the final, shuddering gasp of an era. It's a moment of profound cosmic shift, a seismic change in the governance of the universe. The defeated Titans face their grim judgment. Most of them are banished to Tartarus, the deepest, darkest abyss beneath the underworld, a prison from which escape is thought to be impossible. You feel the crushing weight of that place, a void of perpetual gloom and inescapable despair. It's a punishment fitting for those who sought to hold onto power through tyranny. Kronos, the architect of his own downfall, is also cast into Tartarus, eternally bound, forever grappling with the consequences of his fear and his unspeakable acts. Some myths say he's chained at the very bottom, forever digesting the stone. That saved Zeus, a rather poetic, if horrific, justice, wouldn't you say? However, not all the Titans suffer the same fate. Remember Atlas, the powerful Titan who fought as a general for Kronos. For his prominent role in the war, he receives a unique and terrible punishment. Instead of being cast into Tartarus, he is condemned to stand at the western edge of Gaia, forever holding up the sky, preventing Uranus from once again pressing down upon the earth. You see him, a colossal figure, muscles straining, his head bowed under the immense, crushing weight of the celestial sphere. It's an eternal burden, a solitary agony, a constant reminder of the Titan's failed rebellion. His punishment serves as a potent symbol of the consequences of challenging the new Olympian order. It's a heavy sentence, but it ensures the separation of heaven and earth, allowing space for mortal life to flourish. With the Titans imprisoned and the threat of their return neutralized, the Olympians are faced with a monumental task, establishing a new order for the cosmos. The universe is a blank slate, a vast, untamed wilderness of raw power and untapped potential. There's no instruction manual for running the cosmos, so they have to figure it out as they go along. You imagine them sitting around, perhaps on the newly claimed summit of Mount Olympus, discussing the immense responsibility that now rests upon their shoulders. Zeus, as the leader of the victorious rebellion and the one who orchestrated Kronos' downfall, is the natural choice for supreme ruler. But ruling a cosmos isn't a one-god job, especially when you have siblings who are just as powerful, albeit slightly less cunning, as you are. So, in a moment of foresight and perhaps a touch of democratic spirit, or at least familial obligation, Zeus proposes a division of realms. This is where the famous cosmic lottery comes into play. They divide the universe into three primary domains: the heavens, the sea, and the underworld. Zeus claims the heavens and becomes the king of the gods, master of lightning and thunder, ruler of the sky and all that happens beneath it. You see him seated on his throne, radiating authority, a powerful figure embodying strength and cosmic law. Poseidon, through a drawing of lots, wins the sea. He becomes the master of the oceans, commanding its currents, its creatures, and its storms, wielding his mighty trident to stir the waters or calm them. And Hades, drawing the short straw, or perhaps simply accepting his grim fate with quiet resignation, becomes the lord of the underworld, the realm of the dead. He will rule over the spirits of the departed, a somber but absolutely crucial role in the cosmic balance. While these three brothers claim the most powerful realms, the other Olympian gods are also assigned their spheres of influence and power, forming the core pantheon. Hera, Zeus's sister and eventually his often beleaguered wife, becomes the queen of the gods, goddess of marriage and childbirth. Demeter takes dominion over agriculture and the harvest, ensuring the fertility of the earth. And Hestia, perhaps the most understated but crucial of them all, becomes the goddess of the hearth and home, representing stability, family, and the sacred flame. These initial six form the bedrock of the Olympian hierarchy, establishing order where once there was only chaos and conflict. This division of power is a mainstream historical fact in Greek mythology, representing the systematic organization of the cosmos after a period of primordial conflict. It's the mythological equivalent of forming a new government after a revolution. Historians still argue whether this reflects a true belief in a structured divine bureaucracy, or if it's a narrative device to explain the different forces of nature and human experience. It's interesting to consider, isn't it? Did the ancient Greeks genuinely believe Hades was literally down there, doling out eternal punishments like a cosmic DMV clerk, or was it a way of understanding death and the unknown? With the major realms assigned, the Olympians begin the monumental task of establishing their rule. They build their magnificent palace on Mount Olympus, a gleaming citadel high above the clouds, inaccessible to mortals. You envision marble halls, shimmering gold, and endless feasts, a place of divine majesty and power. This isn't just a dwelling, it's a statement, a declaration of their new supremacy. The establishment of the Olympians marks the beginning of a new age, one defined by order, law, and a more structured form of divine intervention in the world. However, this isn't to say it's a completely peaceful era. Oh no, far from it. The Olympians, despite being the good guys in this narrative, are still gods. And gods, as you're about to discover, are very much like incredibly powerful, often petty, and sometimes downright dysfunctional humans. They squabble, they fall in love, often with disastrous consequences, they get jealous, and they meddle endlessly in the affairs of mortals. A quirky tidbit that always makes me chuckle. Despite the formal division of power, you'll notice throughout the myths that Poseidon and Hades still sometimes pop up on Olympus for family meetings, or when Zeus throws a particularly lavish party. It's a bit like when your distant cousins from another state come over for Thanksgiving. They have their own houses, but they still show up for the big family gatherings. It adds a touch of relatable, if divine, dysfunction to the grandeur. Zeus, Now, the undisputed king faces the challenge of maintaining his authority among his powerful siblings and the ever-growing pantheon of lesser gods. He must prove himself, not just a conqueror, but a just ruler, or at least a ruler strong enough to enforce his will. His reign is characterized by the establishment of cosmic laws and the meting out of justice, though his own personal life is often a whirlwind of scandalous affairs and vengeful reprisals, making him a complex figure to say the least. He's powerful, decisive, and often wise, but also incredibly susceptible to his own desires and pride. The cosmos, once a swirling void and then a battleground for monstrous giants, now has a structure. The heavens are ruled by Zeus, the seas by Poseidon, and the underworld by Hades. This fundamental organization provides the framework for all the stories that are yet to unfold. For the creation of mortals, for the rise of heroes, and for the countless interactions between gods and humanity, you can feel the sense of stability settling in, a deep breath taken by the universe after millennia of unrest. But remember, stability in mythology is often just the calm before the next storm. Or perhaps, the calm before the next utterly bewildering divine family drama. The stage is perfectly set for the grand narratives of creation and human interaction to begin. With the cosmos now neatly divided and the Olympians firmly in charge on Mount Olympus, you might think things settled down. Oh, if only. Power vacuums, even cosmic ones, rarely stay calm for long. Even with the Titans banished to Tartarus, the universe still has a few primordial surprises lurking in its depths. And the Olympians, as you're learning, are still figuring out this whole ruling thing. They're like new managers, full of big ideas, but still prone to making some rather spectacular mistakes, often with dire consequences for everyone else. The most immediate and terrifying challenge to Zeus's newly established order came in the form of Typhon, a truly monstrous being, considered by many to be the deadliest creature in all of Greek mythology. You feel a shiver just thinking about him. Typhon was the last child of Gaia, who was understandably still quite furious about Zeus imprisoning her beloved Titan children in Tartarus. Imagine the ultimate angry mother sending her biggest, baddest kid to wreak havoc. Gaia conjured Typhon from the earth, a massive, terrifying creature specifically designed to be an anti-Zeus. A final, desperate attempt to overthrow the Olympians and restore the old order. Typhon was an absolute nightmare to behold. You picture him, so tall that his head scraped the stars, his arms stretching from east to west. Instead of normal hands, he had 100 serpentine heads, constantly hissing and spewing fire. His lower body was a mass of coiled vipers, and from his shoulders sprang countless wings, blocking out the sun. His eyes glowed with malevolent fire, and his voice was a cacophony of animalistic roars, the bellows of a bull, the hissing of serpents, and the barking of dogs, all at once. If that doesn't scream villain, I don't know what does. He was, in essence, a living, breathing natural disaster. A whirlwind of destruction and primal terror. Typhon marched directly towards Mount Olympus, intending to destroy the gods and reclaim cosmic dominion for Gaia. The Olympian gods, upon seeing this abominable creature approaching, were utterly terrified. You can almost see them, these proud, powerful deities, suddenly reduced to panic. Many of them, in a rather embarrassing display of divine self-preservation, transformed themselves into animals and fled to Egypt. Zeus, however, being the king, could not flee. He had to stand his ground. He was the one who had brought order, and he had to defend it. The ensuing battle between Zeus and Typhon was even more ferocious than the Titanomachi, if you can believe it. This was a one-on-one showdown, a clash of ultimate power. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts with furious intensity, striking Typhon with bolts of pure energy. But Typhon, resilient and monstrous, fought back with equal ferocity, breathing fire and tearing at the earth with his immense strength. You feel the ground shake, the air thick with smoke and the tang of ozone at one point. Typhon managed to wound Zeus, tearing out his sinews tendons and carrying them away, leaving the king of the gods weakened and helpless. You gasp, witnessing Zeus, the mighty ruler, reduced to immobility. This critical moment highlights a recurring theme in mythology. Even gods are vulnerable. Typhon took Zeus's sinews and entrusted them to his sister, the she-dragon Delphine, guarding them in a cave in Cilicia. This is where the story gets a little weird, even for mythology. Hermes, the messenger god, and Aegipan, a goat-footed god, sometimes identified with Pan, displaying remarkable cunning and bravery, managed to sneak into Delphine's cave, distract the she-dragon, and steal back Zeus's sinews. They then reattached them to Zeus, restoring his strength. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Talk about an unexpected medical procedure, right? It's like reattaching a USB cable to your supercomputer just before a major crash. Once his power was restored, Zeus returned to the battle with renewed fury. He pursued Typhon across the world, from Mount Cassius in Syria to Thrace, and finally, to Sicily. He continued to unleash his thunderbolts, eventually overwhelming the monstrous giant. The earth groaned under Typhon's weight as he fell. In a final, decisive act, Zeus trapped Typhon beneath Mount Etna, a volcano in Sicily. You hear the deep rumble of the earth, the fiery breath of the mountain, which is said to be Typhon's eternal rage, manifesting as volcanic eruptions. So, next time you hear about a volcano erupting, you can just picture a giant, angry monster. Grumbling under a mountain, the defeat of Typhon solidified Zeus's reign. It proved his supreme authority, not just over the Titans, but over even the most primal and chaotic forces of nature. It truly established him as the king of the gods, a testament to his strength, cunning, and ultimately, his ability to protect the established cosmic order. This event is a mainstream historical fact within Greek mythology, often cited as the definitive moment Zeus secured his power. Historians still argue whether the Typhon myth represents the triumph of order over chaos, a literal geological explanation for volcanic activity, or perhaps even a reflection of an ancient conflict between different cults. With the major threats to their rule subdued, the Olympians could finally focus on establishing their dominion over the world, which now included the nascent development of mankind. This brings us to another pivotal moment in cosmic history, the creation of mortals. Now, there are a few versions of how humans came to be. Some myths say Zeus himself created them, shaping them from the earth. But the most popular and enduring tale involves the cunning Titan, Prometheus. Remember Prometheus? He's the Titan of foresight, the one who wisely sided with Zeus during the Titanmachi. He and his brother Epimetheus, whose name literally means hindsight or afterthought, were tasked by Zeus with creating creatures to inhabit the newly ordered world. Epimetheus, being Epimetheus, jumped right into it. He began distributing various qualities and abilities to the animals: strength, speed, fur, claws, wings, shells. He gave them everything they needed to survive and thrive in their environments. You can imagine him excitedly handing out traits like candy, a little too eager and not thinking ahead. By the time Epimetheus got to mankind, he realized he had given away all the good qualities. Humans were left naked, defenseless, and utterly without any natural advantage. You cringe at the thought, picturing these poor, vulnerable beings in a harsh, untamed world. Prometheus, seeing his brother's colossal blunder and feeling sympathy for these helpless creatures, decided to intervene. He recognized that humans needed something special to survive, something to elevate them above the beasts. Prometheus, with his keen intellect, knew that true superiority wasn't about physical attributes. It was about ingenuity, creativity, and the ability to shape one's own destiny. He decided to give humans a gift that would set them apart, a gift that was a direct challenge to Zeus's authority: fire. Not just any fire, but fire stolen from the gods themselves, from the forge of Hephaestus on Mount Olympus. You imagine Prometheus, a defiant glint in his eye, carefully snatching a burning ember and spiriting it away to the mortals. It's a bold, rebellious act, a direct transgression against the new cosmic order. This gift of fire was revolutionary. It allowed humans to cook food, providing warmth, light, and protection from wild animals. More importantly, it enabled craftsmanship, the forging of tools, and the development of civilization. It was the spark that ignited human progress, lifting them from a state of primitive vulnerability to one of potential dominance. Prometheus essentially gave humanity the means to become more than just another animal, to aspire to something greater. It's like giving someone a superpowered Swiss Army knife when everyone else just has a dull spoon. Zeus, however, was absolutely furious. He saw Prometheus's act as a direct challenge to his supremacy, an audacious defiance of his will. He didn't want mortals to be too powerful or too independent. He wanted them to be reliant on the gods, a testament to their divine authority. The gift of fire, to Zeus, was an act of treason, a betrayal by a former ally, and Zeus, as we've established, is not a god to cross lightly. He's got a temper hotter than his Thunderbolts. Prometheus was brought before Zeus for judgment. For his transgression, Zeus devised a horrific and eternal punishment. Prometheus was chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Every day, an eagle, a symbol of Zeus himself, would descend and tear out his liver. And every night, the liver would regenerate, only for the gruesome cycle to repeat the next day for all eternity. You feel the gut-wrenching pain of this endless torment, the chilling brutality of divine justice. It's a punishment that emphasizes Zeus's absolute power and his uncompromising nature when his authority is challenged. This punishment of Prometheus is a powerful myth, illustrating themes of divine justice, human suffering, and the eternal struggle between authority and rebellion. It's a key narrative in understanding the early relationship between gods and mortals. A quirky tidbit: while the myth portrays Zeus as vengeful, the enduring image of Prometheus is often one of a benevolent, suffering hero, a benefactor of humanity. He's revered for his self-sacrifice and his championing of mankind, embodying the spirit of defiance against oppressive power. Even in modern times, Promethean refers to daring originality or creativity, often with a hint of rebellion. But Zeus's revenge wasn't limited to Prometheus alone. He also had a punishment in mind for humanity, a gift that would introduce suffering, toil, and misfortune into their lives, a direct counter to the benefits of fire. This leads us directly to the creation of the first woman, Pandora, a figure whose name means all gifts, though, as you'll soon discover, not all gifts are truly beneficial. The stage is set for a fresh wave of cosmic consequences, all stemming from that initial spark of rebellion and compassion. So Zeus, still fuming about Prometheus's audacious gift of fire to humanity, decided that punishment wasn't just for the Titan. Oh no. Humanity, in his divine eyes, also needed to learn a lesson about the dangers of unsolicited gifts and the perils of divine defiance. He wanted to introduce hardship and woe into their lives, to balance out the newfound advantages fire had given them. It's like a cosmic parent who, after catching their kids with an unauthorized toy, decides to give them a really complicated puzzle with missing pieces. This then brings us to the myth of Pandora, the first woman, and a figure designed by the gods to be both a blessing and a curse. You imagine Zeus, his brow furrowed in thought, perhaps with a mischievous glint in his eye, commissioning the other gods to contribute to her creation. Hephaestus, the divine smith, molded her from earth and water, shaping her with exquisite beauty Athena, goddess of wisdom and crafts, breathed life into her and taught her skills like weaving and sewing. Aphrodite bestowed upon her charm, grace, and alluring beauty. Hermes, the trickster god, gave her a cunning mind, persuasive speech, and a deceptive heart. And so on, each god contributing a gift, making her irresistible, but also imbued with certain ... less desirable qualities. Her name, Pandora, literally means all gifts, but as you'll see, the ultimate gift she carried was far from benevolent. You watch as Pandora comes to life, a vision of beauty and grace, but with an underlying current of curiosity and perhaps a touch of mischief. Zeus then gives her a special, exquisitely crafted box, often mistakenly called a jar in older translations. But the idea is the same, and instructs her never, ever to open it. He gives her to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, as a gift. Now, remember Epimetheus, the one with hindsight. Prometheus, with his foresight, had warned his brother never to accept gifts from Zeus, fearing precisely this kind of divine trickery. But Epimetheus, true to his nature, was charmed by Pandora's beauty and disregarded his brother's warning. You can practically hear Prometheus' face palming across the Caucasus Mountains as his poor, unsuspecting brother falls for the oldest trick in the book. Epimetheus accepts Pandora, and with her, the forbidden box. Pandora, being human, or rather, the first human, and having been specifically imbued with curiosity by the gods, finds herself unable to resist the allure of the box. You feel her internal struggle, the nagging temptation, the burning desire to know what lies within. Day after day, she eyes the beautiful, forbidden container, wondering what secrets it holds. The more she tries to resist, the stronger the urge becomes. Finally, her curiosity overwhelms her. You see her hands trembling slightly as she carefully, perhaps just a tiny crack, opens the lid of the box. And out of it, like a dark, noxious cloud, pour all the evils and misfortunes that afflict humanity: sickness, toil, death, envy, hatred, war, famine, pestilence, old age, and a countless parade of other miseries. You feel a chill as these invisible forces stream past you, forever unleashed upon the world. It's a truly bleak moment, the symbolic introduction of suffering into the human experience. Pandora, horrified by what she has done, quickly slams the lid shut, but it's too late. All the evils have escaped. However, one single entity remains. Trapped at the very bottom of the box, Elpis, or hope. Pandora manages to close the lid just before hope can escape, often interpreted as leaving humanity with at least one consolation amidst all the suffering. This is a crucial detail, a small glimmer of light in an otherwise dark tale. Historians still argue whether hope remaining inside the box is a blessing, meaning humanity always has hope, even in despair, or a further curse, meaning humanity is endlessly tormented by an unfulfillable longing for a better future. It's a wonderfully ambiguous ending, isn't it? The myth of Pandora's box is a mainstream historical fact in our understanding of Greek mythology, a foundational story explaining the origin of human suffering and the dual nature of divine gifts. It illustrates the idea that even good things can have unintended, or rather, intended negative consequences when they come from the gods. This story, in a way, is Zeus's final jab at Prometheus, saying, "You gave them fire. Fine, I'll give them endless misery to go with it." With humanity now created and grappling with the newly unleashed evils, the Olympian gods begin to truly settle into their roles, defining their domains and becoming the figures we recognize today. You envision Mount Olympus, now a bustling hub of divine activity, a cosmic version of a busy government complex, albeit one with significantly more dramatic flair and family arguments. Let's meet some of these key players more formally. Zeus, as we know, is the king of the gods, ruler of the sky, wielder of the thunderbolt, and enforcer of cosmic law. He is often depicted with a royal scepter and an eagle, his sacred animal. He is powerful, majestic, and commanding, but also notoriously promiscuous, with a long list of divine and mortal lovers, leading to endless jealousy and drama, particularly with his wife. He's like that CEO who runs a massive company with an iron fist, but whose personal life is a constant tabloid scandal. Hera, Zeus's queen and sister, is the goddess of marriage, women, childbirth, and family. You see her, regal and proud, often depicted with a diadem and a scepter, and her sacred animals are the peacock and the cow. However, much of her mythology revolves around her intense jealousy and vengeance towards Zeus's many lovers and their offspring. She's the ultimate scorned wife, often unleashing her wrath in truly creative and destructive ways. Her constant feuds with Zeus provide endless drama and remind us that even divine marriages aren't always a fairy tale. Poseidon, one of the big three, rules the seas, rivers, earthquakes, and horses. You picture him, a powerful, often moody god, wielding his trident, capable of calming the waters or stirring up devastating storms. He's often depicted with a powerful build, a flowing beard, and a rather imposing presence. He's got that rough and tumble sea captain vibe, ready to punch a hole in the earth if he gets annoyed. Hades, the third of the big three, is the grim and often misunderstood ruler of the underworld and the god of the dead. He is also the god of wealth, as all precious metals and gems come from beneath the earth. You see him, a somber figure, often depicted with a helm of invisibility, remember that, and a two-pronged staff. He rarely leaves his dark domain and is often perceived as terrifying, though he is generally fair in his judgments. He's not evil, just dedicated to his very particular job. He's like the quiet, intense guy who runs the most vital department, but no one ever invites him to the office party. Demeter, goddess of agriculture, grain, and the harvest, is a vital deity for humanity. You feel the warmth of the sun and the rich earth when you think of her. Her moods directly affect the fertility of the land. She's often depicted with stalks of wheat or a cornucopia. Her most famous myth involves the abduction of her daughter, Persephone, by Hades, which explains the changing seasons, a lovely, poignant story that touches on themes of loss and renewal. Hestia, perhaps the most gentle and unobtrusive of the Olympians, is the virgin goddess of the hearth, home, family, and domestic life. She rarely leaves Olympus and embodies stability and inner peace. She relinquished her seat on the Olympian council to Dionysus to maintain cosmic balance, highlighting her selfless nature. You sense a quiet warmth and comfort in her presence, like the steady glow of a fireplace on a cold night. She's the unsung hero of Mount Olympus, ensuring everything stays grounded. Then we have the next generation, born from Zeus's various unions: Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, handicrafts, and heroic endeavor, famously sprang fully formed and armed from Zeus's head after he swallowed Metis, his first wife, to prevent a prophecy of her having a son more powerful than him. You imagine her, a formidable figure in full battle armor, helmet gleaming, holding a spear and a shield emblazoned with the Gorgon's head. She is known for her intelligence, her calm demeanor, and her unwavering support for heroes. She's the ultimate tactical genius, always 10 steps ahead. Apollo, god of music, poetry, archery, healing, light, and prophecy. He is often depicted with a lyre and a bow. He drives the sun chariot across the sky in some traditions, though this role is sometimes attributed to Helios. You hear the sweet strains of music and feel the warmth of inspiration when you think of him. He is the epitome of classical beauty and intellectual pursuits. Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, is the virgin goddess of the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, the moon, and childbirth. You see her, swift and agile, with her bow and arrows, often accompanied by deer or hunting dogs. She is fiercely independent, a protector of nature, and unforgiving to those who violate her domain or her sacred vows. She's the ultimate survivalist, thriving in the untamed wilds. Ares, the god of war, specifically the brutal, chaotic, and bloodthirsty aspects of battle. He's often depicted in full armor, holding a spear and shield. Unlike Athena, who represents strategic warfare, Ares embodies pure, savage violence. He is hot-headed, impulsive, and often a source of trouble for the other gods. You feel the visceral rush of combat, the primal urge to fight when you consider him. He's the guy who always jumps into a brawl without thinking. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation, famously born from the sea foam after Uranus's castration. She is undeniably beautiful, capable of inspiring desire. In gods and mortals alike, she is often depicted with doves and roses. Her beauty, however, often comes with a manipulative streak, and her affairs cause considerable drama on Olympus. She's the glamorous influencer of the ancient world, enchanting everyone but causing endless jealousy. Hephaestus, the lame god of blacksmiths, craftsmen, artisans, sculptors, metals, metallurgy, fire, and volcanoes. He was thrown from Mount Olympus by either Hera for his lameness or Zeus for siding with Hera. Despite his physical impairment, he is incredibly skilled and industrious, creating magnificent weapons and artifacts for the gods. You hear the clang of his hammer, see the sparks fly in his forge. He's the ultimate underdog, proving that skill and dedication triumph over physical limitations. He's also married to Aphrodite, a classic Beauty and the Beast pairing that often highlights his long-suffering nature. Hermes, the nimble messenger of the gods, god of trade, thieves, travelers, sports, athletes, and border crossings. You picture him with winged sandals and a caduceus, his winged staff. He is quick-witted, charming, and often a trickster, capable of moving between the divine, mortal, and underworld realms with ease. He's the ultimate multitasker, delivering messages, guiding souls, and even inventing things on the side. And finally, Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, fertility, madness, and ecstasy. He is the last god to be admitted to the Olympian council. Replacing Hestia, you feel the joyous abandon of a wild celebration, the loosening of inhibitions when you think of him. He represents the liberating, sometimes dangerous, aspects of passion and emotion. He's the life of the party, but a party that can sometimes get a little too wild. This initial overview of the Olympian pantheon gives you a good sense of the intricate network of divine powers and personalities that now govern the universe. Their individual characteristics, their relationships, and their often conflicting agendas will drive many of the myths and legends to come. These are not distant, abstract deities. They are characters, albeit immortal ones, with very human-like flaws and desires. A mainstream historical fact is that the structure and attributes of these core Olympians were largely consistent across ancient Greek city-states, though local cults often emphasized different aspects of their personalities. Historians still argue whether the anthropomorphic nature of the Greek gods, their human-like forms, emotions, and flaws, was a reflection of Greek society or a deliberate, artistic choice to make them more relatable and understandable to mortals. It's a fun thought, isn't it? Did the Greeks make their gods flawed to reflect themselves, or did they believe the gods were flawed and just happened to be in charge? Now that we've introduced the core players of the Olympian pantheon, each with their own unique personalities, powers, and often their fair share of divine baggage, you might imagine a period of cosmic peace and quiet. After all, the Titans are banished, Typhon is subdued, and the universe has its new management team in place. But remember, this is Greek mythology. Peace and quiet is rarely a long-term forecast, especially when you have a bunch of powerful, dramatic, and often petty gods running the show. Their daily lives are a whirlwind of love affairs, vengeful schemes, cosmic interventions, and surprisingly, frequent family squabbles. It's like a reality TV show, but with more lightning bolts and less commercial breaks. The focus now shifts from the grand, foundational conflicts of creation to the interactions between gods and mortals, and the rise of the heroic age. While the gods are powerful, they often find themselves entangled in the lives of humans, sometimes as benefactors, sometimes as cruel tormentors, and often as both. You see, the gods aren't just sitting on Olympus, idly polishing their golden thrones. They're constantly observing, judging, interfering, and occasionally even sirring children with mortals, which, as you can imagine, leads to all sorts of complicated family trees and epic destinies. This era sees the emergence of exceptional mortals known as heroes. These aren't just ordinary people. They are often demigods, children of a god and a mortal, or mortals who possess extraordinary strength, intelligence, courage, or divine favor. They embark on perilous quests, battle monsters, overcome impossible odds, and often, tragically, meet a dramatic end. Their stories are a blend of divine intervention, human resilience, and a hefty dose of fate. One of the most famous and universally recognized heroes is Hercules, or, as he's better known by his Roman name, Hercules. You instantly picture him, a figure of immense strength, often depicted with a lion's skin and a club. His story is one of incredible feats, but also one of profound suffering, largely due to the relentless persecution by the jealous goddess Hera. She really held a grudge against Zeus's illegitimate children, and Heracles, being arguably Zeus's most famous demigod son, was a prime target. Heracles was the son of Zeus and Alcmene, a mortal princess. Hera, furious at Zeus's infidelity, delayed his birth and later, in a fit of rage, sent 2 serpents to kill the infant Heracles in his cradle. You gasp as you imagine the terror of the moment, but then you witness the incredible strength of the infant. He strangles both snakes with his bare hands. Even as a baby, he was a force to be reckoned with. It's like a superhero origin story, but with more reptilian peril. Hera's malice continued to plague Heracles throughout his life. Later, she drove him to a temporary madness, during which he tragically killed his own wife, Megara, and their children. You feel the profound grief and despair that must have engulfed him after such an unspeakable act. When he recovered, filled with remorse and seeking atonement, he consulted the oracle of Delphi. The oracle instructed him to serve his cousin, King Eurystheus of Tiryns, for 12 years and perform whatever labors Eurystheus commanded. These became the legendary 12 labors of Heracles. It was meant to be an impossible task, a series of challenges designed to break him or kill him. But Heracles, with his incredible strength and unwavering determination, faced each one head-on. Let's dive into some of these monumental tasks, because they are truly epic. You follow Heracles on his journey, feeling the strain of his efforts, the weight of his burden. First, the Nemean lion. This was no ordinary lion. Its golden fur was impenetrable to mortal weapons. Heracles first tried his bow and arrow, then his club, to no avail. Finally, he cornered the beast in its den and, using his immense strength, strangled it with his bare hands. You feel the raw power in his grasp. He then skinned the lion, using its own claws, and wore its impenetrable hide as armor. A fitting trophy and a practical defense. Next, the Lernaean Hydra. This was a multi-headed serpent-like monster, and here's the kicker, for every head he cut off, 2 more would grow in its place. You cringe at the thought, realizing the impossible nature of the task. Heracles' nephew, Iolaus, accompanied him and provided a clever solution. After Heracles cut off a head, Iolaus would immediately cauterize the stump with a burning torch, preventing new heads from growing. Finally, Heracles severed the immortal central head and buried it under a massive rock. He also dipped his arrows in the Hydra's venom, making them deadly. This labor highlights the importance of brains over just brawn, a valuable lesson even for a demigod. Third, the Cyrenian hind. This was a magnificent golden-horned deer, sacred to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Heracles couldn't harm it, so he had to capture it alive. He pursued it for a full year across Greece, through forests and snowy mountains, displaying incredible stamina and patience. Finally, he cornered it near the river Loddon and caught it, carrying it all the way back to Eurystheus. You feel the exhaustion of that relentless pursuit. Fourth, the Erymanthian boar. This was a monstrous, destructive, wild boar that terrorized the region of Arcadia. Heracles had to capture it alive. He chased the boar through thick snow until it collapsed from exhaustion, then netted it and brought it back. This labor showcased his ability to outwit and outlast, not just overpower. Fifth, the Augean stables. King Augeas had stables that hadn't been cleaned in 30 years and housed thousands of cattle, resulting in an unimaginable amount of dung. Eurystheus assigned this labor to humiliate Heracles. Heracles, again using his wit, diverted to rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, to flow through the stables, cleaning them in a single day. You probably wouldn't want to be downwind of that operation. This labor showed his ingenuity and resourcefulness. A true blue-collar hero getting the job done. Sixth, the Stymphalian birds. These were man-eating birds with bronze beaks, metallic feathers they could shoot like arrows, and poisonous droppings, terrorizing the Stymphalian marsh. Athena, always a friend to heroes, gave Heracles a pair of bronze rattles. He used these to scare the birds into flight, then shot them down with his arrows. You hear the deafening clatter of the rattles, driving the monstrous flock into the sky. Seventh, the Cretan bull. This magnificent but destructive bull was ravaging Crete. Heracles traveled to Crete, wrestled the bull into submission, and rode it across the sea back to Mycenae. It was a testament to his strength and control over wild beasts. Eighth, the mares of Diomedes. These were 4 carnivorous horses belonging to King Diomedes of Thrace, who fed them on human flesh. Heracles, after subduing Diomedes and feeding him to his own mares, a rather grim form of poetic justice, brought the now docile horses back to Eurystheus. You feel the barbaric thrill of the hunt, and the unsettling thought of flesh-eating equines. Ninth, the girdle of Hippolyta was the queen of the Amazons, a fierce tribe of warrior women, and she possessed a magical girdle given to her by Ares. Heracles was sent to retrieve it for Eurystheus's daughter. Initially, Hippolyta was willing to give it to him, but Hera, ever the meddler, spread rumors that Heracles intended to abduct Hippolyta. This led to a fierce battle, and Heracles, after killing Hippolyta in the misunderstanding, took the girdle. It's a sad reminder of how divine meddling can ruin perfectly good intentions. 10th, the cattle of Geryon was a 3-bodied, 3-headed giant who lived on the island of Erythea, far to the west, guarded by a monstrous 2-headed dog, Ortherus, and a herdsman. Heracles had to journey to the ends of the earth, kill Geryon and his guardians, and bring the cattle back. He used the golden cup of Helios, the sun god, to sail across the ocean. This labor highlights his epic journeying and his ability to defeat even the most unusual monsters. 11th, the apples of the Hesperides. These were golden apples that granted immortality, guarded by the Hesperides nymphs and a 100-headed dragon named Ladon in a magical garden at the edge of the world. Heracles initially sought the help of Atlas, remember him, holding up the sky. He offered to hold up the sky for Atlas if Atlas would retrieve the apples. Atlas, eager for a moment's relief, agreed. But when Atlas returned, he tried to trick Heracles into holding the sky forever. Heracles, with his quick wit, tricked Atlas into taking the sky back for a moment so Heracles could adjust his padding, then simply walked away with the apples. This labor demonstrates his cunning and ability to outsmart even titans. Finally, the 12th and most dangerous labor, retrieving Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the entrance to the underworld. You feel the cold dread as Heracles descends into the realm of Hades, a place no living mortal was supposed to enter. With the help of Hermes and Athena, and with Hades' reluctant permission, provided Heracles could subdue Cerberus without weapons, he wrestled the monstrous dog into submission and brought him to Eurystheus, terrifying the king completely. This labor symbolized Heracles' ultimate triumph over death itself. These 12 labors are a mainstream historical fact in Greek mythology, defining Heracles as the ultimate strongman and hero. Historians still argue whether the labors are purely mythological tales, allegories for human struggles, or perhaps even reflect real historical events or geographic features simplified and exaggerated into heroic narratives. Regardless, they cemented his place as an iconic figure. Heracles' life, though filled with glorious achievements, was also marked by tragedy and suffering, often orchestrated by Hera. He eventually achieved immortality, rising to Olympus after his death and even reconciling with Hera. He is the quintessential tragic hero, a figure of immense strength and courage, but also one deeply human in his flaws and suffering. He represents humanity's struggle against overwhelming odds and the potential for apotheosis through great deeds. His story is a powerful reminder that even the strongest among us face immense challenges, and that true heroism often comes at a very high personal cost. You feel the exhaustion, the pain, and ultimately the triumph of his journey. What a ride! You've just journeyed alongside Heracles through his arduous 12 labors, a monumental saga of strength, cunning, and enduring suffering. His story, while extraordinary, is just one thread in the rich tapestry of the heroic age. As you feel the lingering echoes of his triumphs and tragedies, you understand that the universe, even under Olympian rule, remains a dangerous and unpredictable place, teeming with monsters, vengeful gods, and the ever-present hand of fate. Now, let's turn our attention to another iconic hero, a figure whose destiny intertwines with horrifying monsters and a fateful prophecy, Perseus. You envision him, a young, daring hero, not necessarily possessing the brute strength of Heracles, but endowed with courage, resourcefulness, and a significant dose of divine assistance. His story is a classic quest narrative, complete with a reluctant hero, impossible odds, and crucial magical items. Perseus was the son of Zeus and Dano, the daughter of King Acrisius of Argos. King Acrisius had received a terrifying prophecy from the Oracle of Delphi. He would be killed by his own grandson. You feel the chill of that prediction, the heavy weight of inevitable doom. Panicked and desperate to avert his fate, Acrisius did not kill Dano, fearing the wrath of the gods if he shed his own bloodline. Instead, he imprisoned Dano in a bronze tower, hoping to prevent her from ever conceiving a child. It's a classic example of trying to outsmart fate, which, as you'll see, rarely works out in mythology. However, Zeus, who clearly had a penchant for finding ways around mortal precautions, visited Dano in her prison in the form of a shower of golden rain. You can almost feel the warm, shimmering droplets, a divine seduction that transcends physical barriers. From this union, Perseus was born. Acrisius, upon discovering the infant, refused to believe divine intervention. Still terrified of the prophecy, he placed Dano and the baby Perseus into a wooden chest and cast them into the sea, hoping they would drown. You hold your breath, feeling the helpless desperation of the mother and child adrift on the vast, uncaring ocean. But fate, and perhaps a touch of divine favor, intervened. The chest drifted safely to the island of Seriphos, where it was discovered by a kind fisherman named Dictys. Dictys rescued them and raised Perseus as his own son. you feel a wave of relief, a brief respite from the harshness of fate. Perseus grew up on Seriphos, strong and brave, largely unaware of his royal lineage or the prophecy that haunted his grandfather. However, the tranquility of their lives was soon shattered. Dictys's brother, King Polydex of Seriphos, was a tyrannical ruler. He desired Dano and began to harass her. When Perseus, now a young man, stood up to protect his mother, Polydex, wanting to get rid of him, devised a cunning plan. He announced that he intended to marry another woman, Hippodamia, and demanded that all his subjects present him with a gift of horses. Perseus, being poor, could not afford a horse. In a moment of youthful bravado and perhaps a touch of pride, he rashly declared that he would bring Polydex any gift, even the head of the Gorgon Medusa. You feel a sudden chill at the mention of Medusa. Her name alone evokes dread. Medusa was one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, monstrous beings with snakes for hair, tusks like boars, and scaly skin. Her most terrifying characteristic, however, was her gaze. Anyone who looked directly upon her face would be instantly turned to stone. She wasn't just a monster. She was a living, breathing petrification hazard. This was an impossible task. A death sentence designed by Polydex to remove Perseus permanently. But Perseus, despite his rash promise, was favored by several powerful Olympians who saw his potential or simply wanted to aid Zeus's son. Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, and Hermes, the resourceful messenger god, both came to his aid. They understood that courage alone wouldn't be enough against Medusa. Athena, ever the pragmatist, gave Perseus a highly polished bronze shield, instructing him to use it as a mirror to look at Medusa's reflection, thus avoiding direct eye contact. You can almost see the gleaming surface, a vital tool for survival. Hermes provided him with his winged sandals, or sometimes instructions on how to acquire them, allowing him to fly swiftly. He also gave him an adamantine diamond-hard sickle or sword, sharp enough to sever Medusa's neck. This is a classic example of divine intervention, providing heroes with the necessary tools for seemingly impossible tasks. It's like being sent on a deadly mission, but getting the ultimate gadget kit from Q. Perseus also needed to find the 3 ancient sisters who shared one eye and one tooth. They alone knew the way to the nymphs who possessed other crucial magical items. You imagine the eerie encounter with these decrepit, terrifying sisters, passing their single eye and tooth amongst themselves. Perseus, with cunning, snatched their eye as they were passing it and refused to return it until they told him the location of the nymphs. It's a wonderfully quirky tidbit, this image of the hero holding a literal eyeball hostage. The nymphs, grateful to Perseus for his cunning, provided him with 3 more essential items: the cap of darkness, or helmet of Hades, which made the wearer invisible; a cabesis, a special magical pouch to safely hold Medusa's head, as even after severance, her head retained its petrifying power; and a pair of winged sandals, if Hermes hadn't provided them already. Fully equipped, Perseus was finally ready to face the Gorgons. You accompany Perseus on his perilous journey to the Gorgons' lair, said to be at the edge of the world, a grim place littered with the stone statues of those who had dared to look upon Medusa. You feel the eerie silence, the petrified forms of past victims serving as a chilling warning. He found the Gorgons asleep. Guided by Athena, who probably used her shield as a targeting scope, Perseus approached Medusa using the reflective shield to see her image. With one swift, decisive stroke of his adamantine sword, he severed her head. You hear the sickening thud, the final hiss of the snakes, and feel the powerful surge of triumph. From Medusa's neck, 2 beings famously sprang forth: Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant bearing a golden sword. It's a rather bizarre birth, even by mythological standards, but a testament to the strange powers inherent in these monstrous beings. Perseus quickly placed Medusa's still-gazing head into the cabooses, preventing himself or anyone else from being turned to stone. The other two Gorgon sisters, Steno and Euryale, awoke and pursued him, but Perseus, wearing the cap of darkness and his winged sandals, escaped invisibly and swiftly through the air. You watch him soar away, the monstrous sisters howling in frustrated rage below. On his flight home, Perseus passed over the kingdom of Ethiopia, ruled by King Cepheus. There, he witnessed a tragic sight: a beautiful maiden chained to a rock by the sea, about to be sacrificed to a sea monster. This was Andromeda, daughter of Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia had boasted that her daughter was more beautiful than the Nereids, sea nymphs, angering Poseidon. As punishment, Poseidon sent a sea monster, Cetus, to ravage the coast, and the oracle declared that the only way to appease the god was to sacrifice Andromeda to the monster. You feel the urgency as Perseus swoops down. He falls instantly in love with Andromeda. He makes a deal with King Cepheus. If he saves Andromeda, he will be allowed to marry her. Cepheus readily agrees. As Cetus emerged from the sea, a colossal, terrifying beast, Perseus engaged it in battle. He flew around the monster, striking it with his sword, and finally, some accounts say he used Medusa's head to turn the beast to stone, or perhaps he merely wounded it severely enough to defeat it. Regardless, he saved Andromeda, freeing her from her chains. The rescue of Andromeda is a mainstream historical fact in Greek mythology, a classic heroic deed showcasing bravery and divine intervention. Historians still argue whether the story reflects ancient, ritualistic, human sacrifice, or is a purely symbolic narrative of triumph over monstrous forces. It's interesting to consider how these myths might have mirrored or influenced societal practices. However, the story doesn't end there. Andromeda was already promised to Phineus, Cepheus's brother. At the wedding feast, Phineus, angry and jealous, confronted Perseus with his supporters. A fierce brawl erupted. Perseus, outnumbered, realized he had no choice but to use his ultimate weapon. He drew Medusa's head from his cabeces and turned his enemies to stone, transforming the wedding celebration into a macabre gallery of petrified figures. It's a rather chilling way to clear a room, isn't it? Perseus eventually returned to Seriphos, where he found his mother, Dano, still being harassed by the tyrannical king Polydex. Polydex refused to believe Perseus had truly slain Medusa, and demanded proof. Perseus, without hesitation, revealed Medusa's head, turning Polydex and his courtiers into stone statues. You feel the satisfaction of seeing justice served, albeit in a rather petrifying fashion. Dictys, the kind fisherman who raised him, was then made the new king of Seriphos. Finally, Perseus decided to return to Argos with Dano to reconcile with his grandfather, Acrisius. But fate, as always, had its own twisted plan. Acrisius, still terrified of the prophecy, fled Argos to Thessaly. Perseus, however, eventually traveled to Thessaly to participate in athletic games. During the games, while competing in the discus throw, Perseus accidentally threw his discus off course. It struck King Acrisius in the head, killing him instantly. You witness the tragic irony of the moment. Despite all of Acrisius's efforts to avert his fate, the prophecy was fulfilled, not through malice, but through an unfortunate accident. It's a powerful reminder of the inescapability of destiny in Greek mythology, a core theme that resonates through countless tales. Perseus, devastated by his unwitting patricide, could not bring himself to rule Argos, having fulfilled the prophecy. He exchanged kingdoms with his cousin Megapenthes, becoming king of Tiryns and founding the city of Mycenae, a historically significant site. The story of Perseus, therefore, is not just about slaying a monster. It's about courage, divine assistance, cunning, and the inescapable nature of prophecy. He is the original monster slayer, setting a precedent for heroes to come. A quirky tidbit about Medusa, while often depicted as a monster from birth, some earlier versions of her myth, particularly in Ovid, depict her as a beautiful priestess of Athena who was raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple. Athena, furious at the desecration, then cursed Medusa by transforming her hair into snakes and giving her the petrifying gaze, punishing the victim rather than the aggressor. This version offers a more tragic and sympathetic view of Medusa, turning her from a monstrous villain into a cursed victim, and it highlights the often problematic morality of the gods themselves. It's a reminder that even in ancient tales, perspectives can shift, and villains can be products of tragic circumstances. You've just witnessed the incredible tale of Perseus, a hero whose destiny was shaped by a terrifying prophecy and whose triumphs were aided by powerful divine gifts. As he unintentionally fulfills the oracle's dark prediction, you're reminded that in this world of gods and monsters, fate is a powerful, unyielding force, often playing out in the most unexpected and ironic ways. With Medusa's head secured and kingdoms reshuffled, the stage is now ready for another legendary hero to step into the spotlight, one whose journey will take him deep into the heart of a monstrous labyrinth. Let's turn our attention to Theseus, the hero of Athens. You picture him, perhaps a younger, more athletic figure than the brawny Hercules, but equally courageous and often guided by his sharp intellect. His story is deeply intertwined with the city of Athens, representing its strength, its democratic ideals even in nascent form, and its triumph over more barbaric forces. He's the quintessential Athenian hero, often depicted as a strong, intelligent, and just leader. The story of Theseus begins with a complex lineage and a hidden identity, a common trope for heroes destined for greatness. He was the son of Aethra, a princess of Troezen. His father, however, was a matter of debate. On one hand, he was the son of King Aegeus of Athens, but on the other, he was also the son of Poseidon, the sea god, who had also lain with Aethra on the same night. This dual paternity gave Theseus both royal lineage and divine favor, a perfect blend for a legendary hero. It's like having two celebrity dads, one a rock star, the other a billionaire CEO, and inheriting traits from both before returning to Athens. Aegeus left his sword and sandals under a massive rock, instructing Aethra that when their son was strong enough to retrieve them, he should journey to Athens and claim his birthright. You imagine the boy growing up with this secret burden, this promise of a destiny awaiting him under a heavy stone. As a young man, Theseus indeed demonstrated immense strength and with great effort lifted the rock, retrieving his father's tokens. He then decided to travel to Athens by land, a perilous journey through a region infested with dangerous bandits and monsters, rather than the safer sea route. This choice immediately marks him as a hero, eager to prove himself and cleanse the land of evil. You join Theseus on his journey, a series of encounters that would become his famous labors. Each one is a testament to his strength, courage, and often his cleverness, as he dispatches notorious villains. First, he encountered Periphetes, known as the Club-Bearer, a giant who ambushed travelers and bludgeoned them to death with his iron club. Theseus swiftly overcame him, seizing the club and making it his own weapon, a symbol of his triumph. Next, he faced Sinis, the pine-bender, a monstrous robber who would tie his victims to two bent pine trees and then release the trees, tearing the poor souls apart. Theseus, with grim justice, subjected Sinis to his own gruesome method, tying him to two pines and letting them rip him asunder. You wince at the thought, a brutal but fitting end for such a villain. He then encountered the Cramionian sow, a giant, ferocious wild pig that terrorized the countryside. Theseus hunted it down and killed it, displaying his prowess as a hunter and protector of the innocent. Then came Siren, a notorious bandit who lurked by a cliff path. He would force travelers to wash his feet and then kick them off the cliff, into the sea, where they would be eaten by a giant turtle. Theseus, again turning the villain's own methods against him, kicked Siren off the cliff to be devoured by his own turtle. It's a rather darkly satisfying sense of cosmic karma, isn't it? Finally, he faced Procrustes, the stretcher. Procrustes was an innkeeper with a gruesome hospitality policy. He had an iron bed and would force his guests onto it. If they were too tall, he would chop off their limbs to fit the bed. If they were too short, he would stretch them until they fit. You shiver at the sheer sadism of this character. Theseus, demonstrating his own grim sense of justice, forced Procrustes onto his own bed and inflicted upon him the same fate he inflicted on others. These individual triumphs established Theseus's reputation as a formidable hero, cleaning up the dangerous roads of Attica and making travel safer. He arrived in Athens, a celebrated figure, his fame preceding him. This series of deeds is a mainstream historical fact in his mythology, serving to introduce him as a capable hero before his most famous quest. Historians still argue whether these specific labors represent actual geographic bandit problems that were later mythologized, or if they were created purely as heroic tropes to enhance Theseus's legend. Upon his arrival in Athens, Theseus found a city in turmoil. King Aegeus was under the sway of the sorceress Medea, who, exiled from Corinth for her heinous crimes including killing her own children, had sought refuge in Athens. Medea, recognizing Theseus's potential threat to her own power and her desire for her son to inherit the throne, immediately recognized him and attempted to poison him. You feel the insidious danger of her magic, her cunning ruthlessness. However, at the last moment, Aegeus recognized the sword and sandals that Theseus carried and realized it was his long-lost son. He knocked the poisoned cup from Theseus' hand, and Medea fled Athens. Now, the city of Athens faced a more profound and humiliating threat from Crete, ruled by the powerful king Minos. Years earlier, Minos' son, Androgeus, had been killed in Attica, some say by Athenians, others by a jealous bull at the Panathenaic Games. In retaliation, Minos had attacked Athens and imposed a devastating tribute every 9 years. Athens had to send 7 young men and 7 young women to Crete to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. You feel the profound shame and despair of the Athenians, forced to send their youth to a monstrous fate. It's a truly barbaric tribute, a constant reminder of their subjugation. The Minotaur was a terrifying creature with the head of a bull and the body of a man, born from an unnatural union. King Minos had angered Poseidon, who sent a magnificent white bull for Minos to sacrifice. But Minos, captivated by the bull's beauty, kept it and sacrificed another. Poseidon, enraged, punished Minos by making his wife, Proserpine, fall madly in love with the bull. From this monstrous union, the Minotaur was born. Minos, ashamed and horrified, commissioned the brilliant craftsman Daedalus to construct the labyrinth, an elaborate and inescapable maze beneath his palace to contain the beast. You imagine the twisting corridors, the dead ends, the disorienting pathways designed specifically to trap anyone who entered. The time for the third tribute was approaching, and the Athenians were filled with dread. Theseus, unwilling to stand by and watch his fellow citizens be sacrificed, volunteered to be one of the 14 youths. His goal was not merely to be a victim, but to slay the Minotaur and end the oppressive tribute once and for all. You feel his courageous resolve, the burden of an entire city's hope resting on his young shoulders. Aegeus, filled with foreboding, begged him not to go. But Theseus insisted. As he set sail, Aegeus gave him a special instruction. If he succeeded, he was to replace his ship's black sails, the sails of mourning, with white sails, so Aegeus would know from afar that his son was safe. This seemingly minor detail sets the stage for a tragic misunderstanding later. Upon arriving in Crete, Theseus immediately caught the eye of Ariadne, King Minos' daughter. She fell deeply in love with him and, knowing the impossibility of navigating the labyrinth, secretly decided to help him. You feel the thrill of forbidden love, a princess defying her tyrannical father for a brave hero. She consulted Daedalus, the architect of the labyrinth, and learned its secret. She then gave Theseus a magical ball of thread often called Ariadne's thread and a sword. She instructed him to tie one end of the thread to the entrance of the labyrinth and unwind it, as he ventured deeper, ensuring he could find his way back out. She made him promise to take her with him back to Athens if he succeeded. You accompany Theseus as he enters the dark, winding corridors of the labyrinth. You feel the disorienting turns, the oppressive silence, broken only by the echoing sounds of his own footsteps and perhaps the distant snorts of the monster. He meticulously unwound the thread, his only guide in the bewildering maze. He eventually found the Minotaur in its central lair, a fearsome beast that had devoured countless victims. The battle was ferocious. Theseus, armed with the sword given by Ariadne, engaged the monster in a brutal struggle. There are varying accounts of how he killed it. Some say he used his bare hands, others that he plunged the sword into its neck or heart. Regardless of the method, you hear the triumphant roar as the beast finally falls, silence descending upon the labyrinth. It's a momentous victory, a liberation from a terrifying tyranny. Using Ariadne's thread, Theseus successfully navigated his way back out of the labyrinth, gathering the other Athenian youths. They then fled Crete, taking Ariadne with them, as promised. You feel the urgency of their escape, knowing Minos' wrath would be swift and terrible once he discovered their treachery. Their journey home, however, was not without its own tragedy. They stopped at the island of Naxos. Here, for reasons still debated by scholars, Theseus abandoned Ariadne. Some say he was commanded by Dionysus to do so, as Dionysus desired Ariadne for himself. Others suggest he simply forgot her or deemed her a burden. You feel the sting of Ariadne's betrayal, her heartbreak as she watched his ship sail away. It's a stark reminder that even heroes can be flawed and make questionable choices. Ariadne was later discovered and comforted by Dionysus, eventually becoming his wife and, in some myths, even gaining immortality. As Theseus's ship approached the shores of Attica, his mind was likely still consumed by his adventures, the thrill of victory, and perhaps the guilt of abandoning Ariadne. In his haste or his grief, he completely forgot the crucial instruction given by his father, King Aegeus, to change the black sails to white upon his successful return. King Aegeus, waiting anxiously on a cliff overlooking the sea, saw the ship approaching with its black sails still unfurled. His heart sank, believing his son had perished in Crete. Consumed by despair and grief, he threw himself into the sea below, committing suicide. You witnessed the tragic culmination of a simple oversight, a poignant testament to the fragility of human emotions and the cruel twists of fate. From that day forward, the sea where Aegeus perished became known as the Aegean Sea, a mainstream historical fact in Greek geography, forever commemorating his sorrowful end. Theseus, upon arriving in Athens and discovering his father's death, was heartbroken. He then became the king of Athens. His reign was characterized by justice, political reform, and a period of prosperity. He united the scattered settlements of Attica into a single political entity, laying the foundations for the powerful city-state that Athens would become. He is often credited with instituting democratic reforms, though this is likely a later embellishment to align him with Athenian ideals. He's the ideal king, a liberator, and a unifier. A quirky tidbit that adds to the complexity of Theseus. While known for his heroic deeds and his role as a just king, he also had a later history of questionable decisions. He abducted Helen before she caused the Trojan War when she was just a child, and he accompanied his friend Pirithous on a disastrous journey to the underworld to try and kidnap Persephone for Pirithous, resulting in both of them being trapped there until Hercules rescued Theseus. Even the greatest heroes sometimes had a tendency to make incredibly bad life choices, demonstrating that their heroism was often accompanied by reckless impulsiveness. The story of Theseus and the Minotaur is a powerful myth about courage, cleverness, and the triumph of civilization over barbarism. It also serves as a cautionary tale about forgetting crucial instructions and the unpredictable nature of fate. You've now seen how divine favor, cunning, and sheer bravery can overcome even the most terrifying monsters and the most intricate traps. You've just navigated the treacherous labyrinth alongside Theseus, witnessing his triumph over the Minotaur and the bittersweet tragedy of his return. His story, like Hercules', illustrates the complex tapestry of heroism, where courage and cunning are often intertwined with human flaws and the cruel hand of fate. As the echoes of his Athenian reign settle, we shift our focus from individual, heroic deeds to a conflict of unprecedented scale, a war that would define an entire age and draw in almost every major figure in the Greek mythological world, the Trojan War. You feel a profound sense of foreboding as we approach this next chapter. This isn't just a battle. It's a decade-long siege, a clash of empires, and a story driven by pride, passion, and devastating consequences. It's the ancient world's biggest blockbuster, complete with an all-star cast of heroes, gods, and a truly epic plot. The origins of the Trojan War are rooted in a series of events that began with a seemingly innocuous wedding and a rather unfortunate golden apple. You see, all the gods and goddesses were invited to the wedding of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a beautiful sea nymph and mother of the legendary Achilles. However, one goddess was deliberately excluded, Eris, the goddess of discord. You can imagine her fury, the ultimate party crasher being left off the guest list. Enraged by the snub, Eris, in a moment of pure spite, threw a golden apple inscribed with the words "to the fairest" into the midst of the wedding banquet. You hear the sudden silence, the collective gasp of the divine guests as this gleaming fruit rolls across the floor. Instantly, 3 of the most powerful goddesses claimed it: Hera, Zeus's queen; Athena, goddess of wisdom and war; and Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Each believed herself to be the most beautiful and therefore the rightful owner of the apple. A heated argument erupted, threatening to shatter the divine festivities. None of the other gods dared to choose, fearing the wrath of the 2 goddesses they didn't pick. So they turned to Zeus to arbitrate. Zeus, wisely for once, avoiding personal involvement in a no-win situation, passed the hot potato, refusing to choose himself. Instead, he declared that the judgment should fall to a mortal, a young man known for his fairness, Paris, a prince of Troy, who was at the time living as a shepherd on Mount Ida, having been abandoned as an infant due to a prophecy that he would cause the ruin of Troy. You see Paris, a handsome but somewhat naive young shepherd, suddenly thrust into an impossible situation. The 3 goddesses appeared before him, each attempting to bribe him for the apple. Hera offered him power and dominion over all of Asia and Europe. Athena offered him wisdom, glory in battle, and invincibility. Aphrodite, however, offered him the most irresistible prize, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Paris. Being a young man, chose Aphrodite's bribe. He awarded the golden apple to her, thus earning the eternal enmity of Hera and Athena, who would become fierce adversaries of Troy throughout the war. You sense the fateful weight of his decision, a seemingly simple choice that would unravel kingdoms and claim countless lives. This incident, known as the Judgment of Paris, is considered the immediate spark that ignites the Trojan War. The most beautiful woman in the world, promised by Aphrodite, was Helen. Unfortunately for everyone involved, she was the daughter of Zeus and Leda, or Nemesis, depending on the myth, and was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. She was renowned for her unparalleled beauty, a living legend, You imagine her radiant, captivating beauty, so extraordinary that it could incite 1,000 ships to sail. Paris, with Aphrodite's aid, travelled to Sparta, while Menelaus was away, perhaps on a trip to Crete, another one of those slightly suspicious absences in mythology. Paris, with his charming ways and Aphrodite's subtle influence, seduced Helen. Some versions say she willingly fell in love and eloped with him. Others imply she was abducted or charmed against her will. Regardless, Helen sailed away with Paris back to Troy, taking with her a substantial portion of Menelaus's treasury. You feel the outrage of Menelaus, the ultimate betrayal. When Menelaus returned to find his wife and his wealth gone, he was, understandably, furious. He immediately called upon his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, and the most influential ruler in Greece, to help him retrieve Helen and avenge the insult to his honor. You hear the rallying cry, the furious calls for war. As word spreads through the Achaean Greek kingdoms, Agamemnon, seeing an opportunity for glory and perhaps for extending his own power, readily agreed to lead the combined Greek forces. He sent messengers to all the Achaean kings and heroes, calling upon them to fulfill an ancient oath. Years earlier, when Helen's hand was being sought by numerous powerful suitors, Odysseus had advised her father, Tyndareus, to make all the suitors swear an oath to defend Helen's chosen husband if anyone ever tried to steal her away. This oath, a clever bit of mythological legal binding, ensured that every major Greek hero was honor-bound to join the expedition against Troy. And so, the greatest armada in Greek myth began to gather. You see the heroes assembling, a veritable dream team of legendary figures. There was Achilles, the greatest warrior of all, son of Peleus, and the sea nymph Thetis. He was virtually invulnerable, except for his heel. As you probably know, the Achilles heel became a metaphor for a fatal weakness. His mother, knowing a prophecy that he would die if he fought in Troy, tried to hide him, dressing him as a girl. But Odysseus, ever shrewd, exposed him. You sense the raw, untamed power emanating from Achilles, a force of nature on the battlefield. There was Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, renowned not for his strength, but for his cunning, intelligence, and eloquent speech. He was a master strategist and trickster. He feigned madness to avoid going to war. He didn't want to leave his wife and infant son. But Palamedes exposed his deception. You see the calculating gleam in his eye, the sharp mind constantly working. There was Ajax, the greater, a giant a man second only to Achilles in strength and a formidable warrior in his own right, known for his stubborn resolve and his massive shield. There was Diomedes, the king of Argos, a brave and impetuous warrior, favored by Athena, who even wounded Ares and Aphrodite in battle, and many more. Nestor, the wise old king, whose counsel was invaluable. Idomeneus, king of Crete. Philoctetes, master archer with Hercules' poisoned arrows. And the two sons of Asclepius, Machaon and Podalirios, skilled healers. You envision the vast assembly, heroes from every corner of Greece, united by an oath and a common cause. The Greek fleet gathered at Aulis, a port in Boeotia. However, they were beset by ill winds and could not sail. Agamemnon, in a moment of hubris, had offended the goddess Artemis by boasting about his hunting skills or killing a sacred stag. To appease her and gain favorable winds for the journey, the seer Calchas declared that Agamemnon must sacrifice his eldest daughter, Iphigenia. You feel the horror of the situation, the terrible choice a father must make. Agamemnon lured Iphigenia to Aulis, under the pretense of marrying her to Achilles. At the last moment, as he was about to sacrifice her, Artemis intervened, replacing Iphigenia with a deer on the altar and spiriting the girl away to serve her as a priestess in some versions. The winds then changed, and the Greek fleet finally set sail for Troy. This chilling episode highlights the brutal and demanding nature of divine appeasement. and a rather grim mainstream historical fact in the mythological narrative. Historians still argue whether the Iphigenia myth reflects real ancient practices of human sacrifice, or is a purely symbolic narrative of extreme piety and sacrifice for the greater good. It certainly gives you pause, doesn't it? The Greeks finally arrived at the shores of Troy, a magnificent and heavily fortified city on the coast of Asia Minor. You see the towering walls, a formidable defense that would withstand a decade of siege. Troy was ruled by King Priam, a wise and aged monarch, and defended by his valiant sons, most notably Hector, the greatest Trojan warrior and prince, the true champion of Troy, and, of course, Paris, whose fateful choice had started it all. The Trojans also had powerful allies from neighboring regions, making them a formidable opponent. The war officially began with the landing of the Achaean forces. The first to land was Protolaus, who bravely fell to a Trojan spear, fulfilling a prophecy that the first Greek to land would die. The war then settled into a prolonged siege. For 9 long years, the Greeks launched repeated assaults on the city walls, but Troy, with its strong defenses and valiant defenders like Hector, proved impregnable. You feel the grinding weariness of endless battles, the constant tension of a long siege. The war wasn't just fought at the walls. There were skirmishes in the plains outside the city, raids on neighboring towns for supplies, and numerous duels between individual heroes. A quirky tidbit that demonstrates the constant divine meddling. Even during the fighting, the gods were not impartial observers. Hera and Athena, still enraged by the judgment of Paris, actively supported the Achaeans. Aphrodite, along with Ares and Apollo, generally favored the Trojans. Zeus tried to remain neutral, but often found himself swayed by various appeals and prophecies. It's like watching a football match where the referees are constantly changing the rules and sometimes even kicking the ball. Themselves, the 9th year of the war brought a major turning point, a quarrel that nearly doomed the Greek effort. Agamemnon, as commander-in-chief, claimed Chryses, the daughter of a priest of Apollo, as his war prize. Her father begged for her return, offering a ransom, but Agamemnon rudely refused. Apollo, enraged by the insult to his priest, sent a plague upon the Greek army. You feel the suffocating weight of the illness, the despair as soldiers sicken and die. The Greek seer Calchas revealed the cause of the plague, demanding Chryses be returned. Agamemnon reluctantly agreed, but in compensation he demanded Briseis, a captive woman who was Achilles' war prize. This act infuriated Achilles, who felt deeply dishonored by Agamemnon's arrogance and disrespect. You see the raw pride and anger on Achilles' face, a slight that cuts deeper than any physical wound. In a fit of rage, Achilles withdrew himself, and his mighty Myrmidon warriors from the fighting. He refused to fight for the Greeks as long as Agamemnon insulted him. This withdrawal had catastrophic consequences for the Greeks, as Achilles was their greatest warrior, their virtually unstoppable force. Without him, the tide of battle began to turn in favor of the Trojans. You feel the profound impact of his absence, the sense of dread that descends upon the Greek camp as their most powerful champion sits idly by. This is the central conflict of Homer's Iliad, a poem which is a mainstream historical fact in the study of ancient Greek literature. Historians still argue whether the withdrawal of Achilles from battle in the Iliad is a narrative device to highlight themes of pride and honor, or if it reflects an actual historical event of a key military figure being sidelined. It's a testament to the enduring power of the story. You've just witnessed the pivotal moment of the Trojan War's 9th year, the catastrophic fallout from the quarrel between Agamemnon and Achilles. With the greatest Greek warrior sulking in his tent, the tide of battle irrevocably turned against the Achaeans. You feel the palpable despair in the Greek camp, the gnawing fear that without Achilles, their decade-long siege is doomed to fail. The air, once filled with the clang of swords and the shouts of triumph, now carries the groans of the wounded and the whispers of doubt. With Achilles and his formidable Myrmidons absent from the battlefield, the Trojans, led by the noble and valiant Hector, gained significant momentum. You see Hector, a shining beacon of courage and skill, rallying his troops and pushing the Greeks back towards their ships. He is Troy's greatest hope, a champion whose bravery inspires his entire city. Day after day, the Trojans press their advantage, breaking through the Greek defenses, threatening to set fire to their ships and drive them back into the sea. The Greeks, without Achilles' near-invincible presence, found themselves faltering, their once proud ranks thinning under the relentless Trojan assault. The Greek heroes, including the mighty Ajax and the cunning Odysseus, fought valiantly, but they could not stem the tide. Agamemnon, finally realizing the gravity of his mistake, sent an embassy to Achilles, offering him lavish gifts and the return of Briseis, untouched, along with other treasures, if he would only return to battle. You hear the pleas of Odysseus and Ajax, appealing to Achilles' sense of duty and honor, but Achilles, his pride still deeply wounded, famously refused. He was utterly unyielding, his anger burning hotter than any battlefield. He declared that he would not return to the fight until the Trojans were literally at his ships, threatening to burn them. The situation became dire. The Trojans, emboldened by their successes, reached the Greek ships, and Hector even managed to set one of them on fire. You feel the heat of the flames, the acrid smell of burning timber, signaling the imminent destruction of the Greek fleet and their entire expedition. This was the moment Achilles had stipulated, but he still refused to move. It was then that Patroclus, Achilles' dearest companion and closest friend, could no longer bear to watch the suffering of the Achaeans. You see the anguish on his face, the selfless courage that drives him. He pleaded with Achilles to return to battle, or at least to allow him to lead the Myrmidons, wearing Achilles' armor, hoping that his appearance would strike fear into the Trojans and turn the tide. Achilles, seeing the desperation of his friend and the plight of his countrymen, reluctantly agreed. He lent Patroclus his magnificent armor, cautioning him strictly not to pursue the Trojans beyond the ships, lest he incurred divine wrath. You watch as Patroclus, clad in Achilles' gleaming armor, charges into the fray. The Trojans, indeed, are struck with terror, believing Achilles himself has returned. They fall back in disarray, and Patroclus, fighting with the fury of Achilles, drives them from the ships and back across the plains. He is a whirlwind of destruction, cutting down Trojan after Trojan, his bravery fueled by his desire to save his friends. However, Patroclus, caught up in the heat of battle and perhaps intoxicated by his success, forgot Achilles' warning. He pursued the retreating Trojans all the way to the walls of Troy. There he was confronted by Hector, aided by the god Apollo, who disarmed Patroclus and revealed him not to be Achilles and Euphorbus who wounded him. Hector then delivered the final, fatal blow, killing Patroclus. You feel the gut-wrenching shock, the profound tragedy of this moment. It's a powerful blow, not just to the Greeks, but to Achilles personally. The news of Patroclus' death devastated Achilles. You witness his raw, unrestrained grief, a primal howl of anguish that shakes the very foundations of the Greek camp. His pride, his anger at Agamemnon, everything else pales in comparison to the loss of his beloved friend. His grief immediately transforms into a burning, insatiable desire for revenge. He vows to kill Hector, no matter the cost. Achilles, without his armor which Hector had stripped from Patroclus as a trophy, needed new gear. His mother, Thetis, descended from the sea to comfort him. She then went to Hephaestus, the divine smith, and implored him to forge new, magnificent armor for her son. You hear the clang of the hammer in Hephaestus's forge, the roaring flames, as he crafts a shield depicting the entire cosmos, along with breastplate, helmet, and greaves, all of unparalleled beauty and strength. This new armor is a symbol of Achilles' renewed and even more terrifying purpose. Clad in his new gleaming armor, Achilles, a furious, godlike figure, rejoined the battle. He was no longer fighting for the Achaeans. He was fighting for vengeance. You see him charge into the Trojan ranks, an unstoppable force, a whirlwind of death. The Trojans, once so confident, now scatter in terror before his wrath. He cuts down warrior after warrior, seeking only one man. Finally, Achilles confronted Hector outside the walls of Troy. You feel the tension of this epic duel. The two greatest warriors of their respective armies facing off, their personal fates intertwined with the destiny of their cities. Hector, despite knowing his own death was foretold, bravely stood his ground, fighting to defend his city and his family. The battle was fierce, but Achilles, driven by grief and divine favor, was ultimately superior. He plunged his spear into Hector's neck, killing him. But Achilles' vengeance didn't stop there. In a brutal and dishonorable act, he tied Hector's body to his chariot by the heels and dragged it around the walls of Troy, in full view of the distraught Trojan citizens, including King Priam and Queen Hecuba. You wince at the savagery of the act, a desecration that shocked even the gods. This continued for days, until Zeus intervened, sending Hermes to escort King Priam to Achilles' tent. Priam, in an act of profound courage and humility, begged Achilles for his son's body. Achilles, moved by the old king's grief and remembering his own father, finally relented and returned Hector's body for proper burial. This moment of shared humanity, even amidst the brutal war, offers a poignant glimpse into the complex emotions that underscore even these epic tales. The death of Hector was a devastating blow to the Trojans, effectively sealing their fate. He was their last true champion, their greatest defender. The Greeks now pressed their advantage, but Troy's massive walls still stood, seemingly insurmountable. The war continued, but the focus shifted. Even Achilles, having achieved his vengeance, still had his own destiny to fulfill. He continued to fight, a dominant force on the battlefield, but the prophecy of his own death loomed. He engaged in numerous battles, notably killing the Amazon, Queen Penthesilea, and the Ethiopian king Memnon, both powerful allies of Troy. Achilles' death finally came near the end of the war. He was killed by an arrow, guided by Apollo, who sided with the Trojans, and shot by Paris. The arrow struck Achilles in his vulnerable heel, the only part of his body not protected by the magical waters of the river Styx, where his mother Thetis had dipped him as an infant, holding him by that heel. You feel the tragic irony of his demise, the fall of the invincible warrior due to a single, tiny weakness. His death marked another profound loss for the Greeks, plunging them into fresh despair. His armor, the one forged by Hephaestus, became the subject of a bitter dispute between Odysseus and Ajax, ultimately leading to Ajax's tragic madness and suicide when Odysseus was awarded the armor. With Achilles gone and Hector dead, the war seemed to be at an endless stalemate. The Greeks could not take the city by force, and the Trojans could not drive them away. It was then that Odysseus, the cunning and resourceful king of Ithaca, devised a brilliant strategy that would finally bring the long siege to an end: the Trojan horse. You sense the shift in tactics, from brute force to ingenious deception. Odysseus proposed building a gigantic wooden horse. This was a stroke of genius, a piece of psychological warfare designed to exploit the Trojans' pride and piety. The plan was to fill the hollow horse with a select group of elite Greek warriors. The rest of the Greek army would then pretend to sail away, making it seem as if they had given up the siege. You imagine the meticulous planning, the hushed conversations, the secrecy involved in such a daring scheme. The Greeks built the immense wooden horse, a colossal structure. A single Greek warrior, Sinon, was left behind to convince the Trojans that the horse was an offering to Athena, a gift meant to appease the goddess for the desecration of her temple during the war, and that it would make Troy impregnable if brought inside the city walls. Sinon, a master of deception, fabricated a story about the Greeks abandoning the siege due to a prophecy, and that the horse was too large to fit through the city gates, meant to discourage the Trojans from taking it inside. He even claimed Odysseus, intended to sacrifice him, which gained him the Trojans' sympathy. The Trojans, weary of war and eager for its end, debated what to do with the mysterious gift. You feel the palpable hope and suspicion in the Trojan camp. Some, like Laocoon, a priest of Apollo, suspected a trick, famously warning, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." He even struck the horse with his spear, and sounds of weapons clanking inside were heard by some. However, at that very moment, two giant sea serpents, sent by Poseidon, who favored the Greeks, emerged from the sea and devoured Laocoon and his two sons, silencing his warnings. This terrifying divine intervention was interpreted by the Trojans as a sign that the horse was indeed sacred and that Laocoon had offended the gods. You feel the chilling power of divine manipulation, solidifying the Trojans' fateful decision. Cassandra, King Priam's daughter, who was blessed with prophecy but cursed never to be believed, also warned them, but her pleas, as always, fell on deaf ears. Convinced by Sinon and the ominous sign of Laocoon's death, the Trojans jubilantly dragged the massive wooden horse into their city, even breaking down a portion of their supposedly impregnable walls to bring it in. You feel the tragic irony, their own hands destroying the very defenses that had protected them for a decade. That night, as the Trojans celebrated their supposed victory with feasting and revelry, believing the war to be over, the Greek warriors, hidden inside the horse, emerged. You imagine the hushed movements, the creak of the trap door, the glint of weapons in the moonlight. Led by Odysseus, and including heroes like Menelaus and Diomedes, they opened the city gates from within. Simultaneously, the rest of the Greek fleet, which had only sailed to a nearby island, returned under the cover of darkness. The city of Troy was plunged into chaos. The Greeks poured through the open gates, catching the unsuspecting Trojans in their sleep. You hear the screams, the clash of steel, the burning of houses. The city, which had resisted for so long, fell swiftly and brutally. King Priam was killed at the altar by Neoptolemus, Achilles' son. Ajax, the lesser, committed sacrilege by dragging Cassandra from Athena's temple. The Trojan heroes, without Hector, fought bravely but were overwhelmed. The city was sacked, its treasures plundered, and its population slaughtered or enslaved. The fall of Troy is a mainstream historical fact in the mythological narrative, often considered the end of the heroic age. Historians still argue whether the Trojan War itself was a literal historical event, a conflation of many smaller conflicts, or a completely fictional epic poem. Archaeological discoveries at the site of historic ancient Troy have revealed multiple layers of cities, suggesting a long history of conflict, which lends some credence to the idea of a real historical basis. But the scale and divine involvement are, of course, mythological embellishments. Regardless, the story stands as one of the most enduring and impactful narratives in Western civilization. A powerful tale of human ambition, divine intervention, and the terrible cost of war. You feel the exhaustion and the grim satisfaction of a war finally ended, but also the profound sadness of a great city utterly destroyed. You've just witnessed the brutal, dramatic fall of Troy, a city that for 10 long years defied the might of the Greek armada, only to fall to the cunning of a single wooden horse. The screams of the dying, the crackle of flames, and the triumphant shouts of the Greeks still echo in your mind. But victory, especially one so hard won and so divinely orchestrated, often comes with its own set of complications. For many of the Greek heroes, the journey home would prove even more perilous and protracted than the war itself. You sense the shift from the collective struggle of war to the individual trials of return, a series of personal odysseys fraught with vengeful gods, monstrous encounters, and the agonizing yearning for home. This brings us to the most famous, an enduring tale of a hero's journey home, the Odyssey of Odysseus. You picture him not as the mightiest warrior like Achilles, nor the strongest like Hercules, but as the master of cunning, the man of many twists and turns. His intellect, his resourcefulness, and his sheer resilience are his greatest weapons. His 10-year journey back to his island kingdom of Ithaca is a saga of survival against supernatural forces, divine wrath, and the cruel whims of fate. The troubles for the returning Greeks began almost immediately after the fall of Troy. Many heroes, swollen with pride and ignoring proper sacrifices, angered the gods. The most significant offense was committed by Ajax the Lesser, who, during the sack of Troy, dragged the Trojan princess Cassandra from the temple of Athena and raped her, committing a heinous act of sacrilege. You recoil at the brutality of this act, a stark reminder of the darker side of conquest. Athena, enraged by the desecration of her temple, sought revenge, often working with Poseidon to make the Greek return journeys a living hell. Odysseus's own troubles began with a series of mishaps and encounters that spiraled into a decade-long ordeal. His journey was largely dictated by the wrath of Poseidon, the god of the sea, whom Odysseus had deeply offended. Remember the Cyclops, Polyphemus, that one-eyed giant? Odysseus blinded him. Well, Polyphemus was Poseidon's son. You can practically hear Poseidon's furious roar, a cosmic, "How dare you mess with my kid?" That sets the stage for Odysseus's maritime nightmare. You join Odysseus and his weary crew as they set sail from Troy, eager to return to their homes. Their first stop, the land of the Kronos, seemed like an easy target for plunder. However, their raid went awry, and the Kronos, reinforced, drove the Greeks back to their ships with significant losses. It's a harsh lesson right out of the gate. Hubris and greed have consequences. Next, they drifted to the land of the Lotus Eaters. Here, some of Odysseus's men ate the intoxicating lotus fruit, which made them forget their homeland and their desire to return, content to remain in a state of blissful apathy. You feel the insidious lure of forgetfulness, the seductive pull of a life without worry or responsibility. Odysseus, recognizing the danger, had to forcibly drag his weeping men back to the ships, reminding them of their purpose. It's a subtle, but potent threat, where the greatest danger is losing oneself. Then came the infamous encounter with the Cyclops. Polyphemus, Odysseus, and his scouting party landed on his island and took refuge in his cave, unaware that it was the home of a gigantic, one-eyed cannibalistic shepherd. Polyphemus trapped them inside, rolling a massive stone across the entrance, and began to devour Odysseus's men, 2 by 2, for his meals. You feel the terror of being trapped, helpless, watching your comrades disappear into the giant's maw. Odysseus, ever cunning, devised a plan. He offered Polyphemus strong, undiluted wine, getting the Cyclops drunk. When Polyphemus asked his name, Odysseus cleverly replied, "No man." Once the Cyclops was in a drunken stupor, Odysseus and his remaining men heated a sharpened olive wood, stake in the fire, and, with immense effort, drove it into Polyphemus's single eye, blinding him. You cringe at the gruesome act, but also feel the thrill of their desperate survival. Polyphemus roared in agony, alerting the other Cyclopes on the island. When they asked who had harmed him, he cried out, "No man is killing me." The other Cyclopes, thinking no one was harming him, simply ignored his cries. It's a brilliant play on words, a linguistic trick that saves their lives. In the morning, as Polyphemus rolled away the stone to let his sheep out, Odysseus and his men clung to the bellies of the sheep, escaping unseen. As they sailed away, Odysseus, in a moment of hubris, couldn't resist shouting his true name back to the blinded giant. This, of course, allowed Polyphemus to curse him and pray to his father, Poseidon, for vengeance, initiating the god's wrath that would plague Odysseus for the next decade. Their journey continued to the floating island of Aeolia, home of Aeolus, the god of winds. Aeolus, taking pity on Odysseus, gave him a sealed bag containing all the unfavorable winds, leaving only a gentle breeze to guide them home. You feel the excitement, the promise of a swift return. However, just as Ithaca was in sight, Odysseus' curious and suspicious crew, believing the bag contained gold, opened it. All the trapped winds burst forth, unleashing a terrible storm that blew their ships far off course, back to Aeolia. Aeolus, realizing Odysseus was clearly cursed by the gods, refused to help them further. You groan in frustration, so close to home, only to be tossed back by foolishness. They then sailed to the land of the Laestrygonians, a race of giant cannibals. The Laestrygonians destroyed all of Odysseus's fleet except for his own ship. His men, like fish, you feel the primal terror, the overwhelming power of these monstrous giants. Only Odysseus's ship and a handful of his crew escaped this horror. Next, they arrived at the island of Aiaia, home of the sorceress Circe. Some of Odysseus's men, sent to explore, were lured by Circe's hospitality. She mixed a potion into their food that turned them into pigs. You cringe at the transformation, men reduced to grunting beasts. When Odysseus went to rescue them, he was aided by Hermes, who gave him the magical herb moly, which protected him from Circe's spells. Odysseus confronted Circe, forcing her to restore his men to human form. He then remained on her island for a year, becoming her lover, before finally being persuaded by his men to continue their journey. It's a strange interlude, a moment of comfort and temptation amidst the perils. Before leaving Circe's island, she instructed Odysseus that he must travel to the underworld to consult the prophet Tiresias about his future journey. You feel the profound dread of descending into the land of the dead, a journey feared by all mortals. This perilous trip marks a psychological turning point for Odysseus, forcing him to confront mortality and destiny. Upon leaving Circe, they faced the deadly sirens. These beautiful but dangerous creatures lured sailors to their deaths with their enchanting songs. Odysseus, forewarned by Circe, had his men plug their ears with beeswax and tie him to the mast, so he could hear the siren's song without succumbing to their lure. You hear the intoxicating melody, the irresistible call that promises knowledge and bliss, but leads only to destruction. It's a powerful metaphor for temptation and the need for self-restraint. They then had to navigate the treacherous strait between Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla was a six-headed monster who snatched sailors from their ships. Charybdis was a terrifying whirlpool that swallowed ships whole. Odysseus, forced to choose between two evils, steered his ship closer to Scylla, sacrificing 6 of his men to the monster's jaws to avoid losing his entire ship to the whirlpool. You feel the agonizing choice, the terrible cost of survival. It's a classic example of a no-win situation, a choice between bad and worse. Their journey led them to the island of Thrinacia, home of the sacred cattle of Helios, the sun god. Despite Odysseus's solemn warnings not to touch the cattle, his men, starving and desperate, slaughtered some of the oxen while Odysseus was asleep. Helios, enraged by the desecration of his sacred animals, complained to Zeus. Zeus, to appease Helios, sent a terrible storm that shipwrecked Odysseus's last ship, killing all his remaining men. You feel the crushing weight of their foolishness, the ultimate price of disobedience. Odysseus alone survived. Clinging to a piece of wreckage, he drifted for days until he washed ashore on the island of Ogygia, home of the beautiful nymph Calypso. Calypso fell deeply in love with Odysseus, and kept him captive on her island for 7 long years, offering him immortality if he would stay with her. You witness his profound despair, his yearning for home despite the idyllic surroundings. He longed for his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. Finally, Zeus, prompted by Athena, who always championed Odysseus, sent Hermes to Calypso, ordering her to release Odysseus. Reluctantly, Calypso helped him build a raft, and he set sail once more. His raft was again shattered by Poseidon's wrath, but with the help of the sea goddess Ino, he managed to swim ashore on the land of the Phaeacians. You see him, battered and exhausted, finally reaching safety after years of torment. Here, he was discovered by Nausicaa, the king's daughter, who led him to the palace of King Alcinous and Queen Arete. The Phaeacians, renowned sailors, treated him with great hospitality. During a feast, Odysseus, prompted by a bard singing about the Trojan War, finally revealed his identity and recounted his incredible, harrowing journey. You hear his voice, filled with both sorrow and triumph, as he recounts his tales. The Phaeacians, moved by his story, provided him with a magnificent ship and a crew to finally take him back to Ithaca. They sailed swiftly, and after 20 years, 10 at Troy, 10 wandering, Odysseus finally arrived back in his homeland. You feel the profound relief, the emotional weight of finally reaching home. However, Ithaca was not as he left it. His palace was overrun by suitors, arrogant noblemen who believed Odysseus was dead and were vying for the hand of his faithful wife, Penelope, and consuming his wealth. Penelope, a symbol of unwavering loyalty, had held them off for years, famously weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus's father during the day and secretly unweaving it at night, promising to choose a suitor only when she finished. You admire her ingenuity and her steadfastness. Odysseus, disguised as an old beggar by Athena, carefully assessed the situation. He was recognized only by his loyal old dog, Argos, who died shortly after seeing his master, and his old nurse, Euryclea, who recognized a scar on his leg while washing his feet. You feel the bittersweet reunion, the quiet loyalty amidst the chaos, with the help of his loyal son, Telemachus, who had grown into a young man while Odysseus was away, and a few trusted servants. Odysseus devised a plan to reclaim his kingdom. Penelope, pressured by the suitors, finally announced that she would marry the man who could string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through the holes of 12 axe heads. The suitors, arrogant and unskilled, all failed. Odysseus, still disguised, asked for a turn. The suitors scoffed, but Telemachus insisted. Odysseus, with ease, strung his own bow, a feat no other mortal could accomplish, and shot the arrow perfectly. Through the axe heads, you feel the tension, the sudden realization dawning on the suitors. With this unmistakable sign of his identity, Odysseus revealed himself. The ensuing battle was a brutal slaughter. Odysseus, Telemachus, and their loyal few, with the aid of Athena, killed all the suitors in the palace. It was a bloody reckoning, a restoration of order through violent justice. You hear the screams of the trapped suitors, the relentless fury of Odysseus as he reclaims his home. Finally, Odysseus was reunited with Penelope. She, cautious after so many years of deceptive suitors, tested him by asking about their unique marriage bed, which Odysseus knew was carved from the trunk of an olive tree and immovable. When he described it perfectly, she finally believed him, and their reunion was filled with joyous tears. You feel the warmth of their long-awaited embrace, the culmination of a 20-year journey. The Odyssey, a mainstream historical fact, as an epic poem by Homer, is more than just an adventure story. It's a profound exploration of human resilience, the meaning of home, the complexities of identity, and the long-term consequences of divine wrath. Historians still argue whether the Odyssey reflects genuine ancient Greek seafaring and trade roots, or if it's purely a fictional tale designed to entertain and teach moral lessons. Regardless, Its influence on literature, art, and popular culture is undeniable, shaping our understanding of the epic journey and the enduring hero. You've just returned with Odysseus to his rightful place in Ithaca, witnessing the triumphant end of his arduous 20-year journey and the bloody reclamation of his home. The relief of his reunion with Penelope and Telemachus is palpable, a quiet joy after so much torment. But as you consider the sweeping narratives we've covered, from the birth of the cosmos to the epic Trojan War and its aftermath, you realize that for every hero basking in victory or surviving against impossible odds, there are countless other stories, other realms, and other beings that populate the rich tapestry of Greek mythology. The universe is vast, and its depths hold more than just the living. Our journey now takes a somber, yet utterly fascinating turn, as we descend into the grim, shadowy realm of Hades, the underworld. You feel a chill as the light fades, replaced by an eternal twilight. This isn't a place of fire and brimstone in the Christian sense, but rather a somber, misty land, the final destination for all mortal souls after death. It is a place of inescapable judgment and perpetual shade, where the living rarely venture, and from which return is almost impossible. The ruler of this bleak domain, as we know, is Hades, one of the three great sons of Kronos. You picture him, a stern and unyielding god, seated on his throne, often described as dark-haired majestic, and wielding a two-pronged staff or a cornucopia symbolizing the wealth hidden beneath the earth. He is grim, certainly, but not inherently evil. He is simply the impartial custodian of the dead, ensuring that souls remain in their proper place. He rarely leaves his kingdom, dedicating himself entirely to his solemn duties. His most famous act, from the perspective of the living, is his abduction of Persephone, which we'll revisit later. The entrance to the underworld is often described as being in various gloomy, remote places on earth caves, deep chasms, or the shores of certain rivers. You imagine these dark openings, shrouded in mists, a silent invitation to the inevitable. Once you cross the threshold, the first significant landmark is the river Styx, the principal river of the underworld, across which the souls of the dead must be ferried. The Styx is more than just a river. It is a sacred boundary, and even the gods swear unbreakable oaths by its waters. To cross the Styx, souls must pay a coin, an obol, to Coron, the ancient, gruff ferryman. You see him, a gaunt figure, pulling his dilapidated skiff across the dark waters, his eyes glowing dimly. This is why, in ancient Greece, it was customary to place a coin under the tongue of the deceased before burial, to ensure their soul could pay. Coron and cross to the afterlife. Unburied souls, or those without the fare, were doomed to wander the banks of the Styx for 100 years, forever unable to find rest. You feel the profound importance of proper burial rites, a final act of kindness for the departed. Beyond the Styx, you encounter Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound of Hades, guarding the entrance to prevent the living from entering and the dead from escaping. You hear his deep, guttural growl, feel the hot breath from his multiple maws. Remember Hercules wrestled him. It's no easy feat. Past Cerberus, the vast realm of the dead opens up. The underworld is typically divided into several regions. The largest and most generalized area is the Erebus, often synonymous with the entrance area, where newly dead souls first arrive. Then there are the specific areas for judgment and repose. The Asphodel Meadows are where the vast majority of ordinary souls reside. You picture a bleak, neutral plain filled with shadowy, unheroic spirits. They wander aimlessly, like ghosts in a fog, remembering little of their former lives, merely existing. It's a rather depressing afterlife, lacking both joy and torment, a sort of eternal mediocrity. You feel the quiet melancholy of this place, the subdued whispers of countless forgotten lives. For the truly wicked, there is Tartarus, the deepest abyss, the prison for the Titans. You remember this place from our earlier discussion. It is a dark, terrible pit, surrounded by a wall of bronze and 3 layers of night, guarded by the Hecatonkaias. Here, the most egregious offenders are subjected to eternal torment. You shudder at the thought of their endless suffering. We've seen Kronos imprisoned here, but other famous sufferers include Sisyphus, condemned to endlessly roll a massive boulder uphill, only for it to tumble back down just as he reaches the top. A metaphor for futile labor, Tantalus, doomed to stand in a pool of water under a fruit tree, forever tantalized by water that recedes when he tries to drink and fruit that moves away when he tries to eat. A punishment for stealing nectar and ambrosia from the gods. The Danaids, 50 sisters, except one who murdered their husbands on their wedding night, condemned to forever carry water in leaky jars, trying to fill a bottomless basin. A punishment for their heinous crime. These punishments are not just random acts of cruelty. They are often symbolic, mirroring the crimes committed in life. It's a rather grim system of divine justice, ensuring that cosmic order is maintained. This concept of different levels of the afterlife based on one's deeds is a mainstream historical fact in many ancient belief systems, reflecting common human concerns about morality and accountability after death. Historians still argue whether the Greek underworld's specific geography and punishments developed organically from folk beliefs or were influenced by the epic poets to serve narrative and moral purposes. For the virtuous and heroic, there are the Elysian fields, or Elysium. This is a beautiful, peaceful paradise, a realm of perpetual spring, happiness, and blissful repose for those favored by the gods or who lived exceptionally righteous lives. You imagine lush meadows, fragrant flowers, and gentle breezes, a stark contrast to the gloom of the rest of the underworld. Heroes like Achilles and Cadmus are sometimes said to reside here. It's the ultimate reward, the ancient Greek equivalent of heaven. In later traditions, a further distinction was made. The Isles of the Blessed, an even more select paradise within Elysium, reserved for those who achieved Elysium 3 times. In contrast to the light-hearted satyrs, there are the more fearsome and often monstrous beings. You've already met the Gorgons like Medusa and the Hecatonkaias, but the mythological world is teeming with other incredible creatures, the centaurs. For example, are half-human, half-horse creatures. You see them, powerful and imposing, with the torso and head of a man joined to the body and legs of a horse. They are often depicted as wild, untamed, and prone to violence and drunkenness, embodying humanity's baser instincts. However, there are exceptions, most notably Chiron, the wise and just centaur, a renowned teacher and healer who mentored many heroes, including Achilles, Hercules, and Jason. He represents the potential for wisdom and civilization even within a wild nature. This concept of hybrid creatures is a mainstream historical fact in many ancient mythologies, reflecting attempts to categorize and understand the natural world. Historians still argue whether centaurs originated from early encounters with horse-riding nomadic tribes by peoples unfamiliar with equestrianism, or if they were purely symbolic representations of untamed nature. Another fascinating category are the chthonic deities, meaning of the earth. While Hades is the primary chthonic god, there are many others connected to the underworld, agriculture, and the mysterious forces beneath the surface. For example, Hecate, whom we briefly mentioned earlier, is a powerful and ancient goddess of magic, witchcraft, crossroads, ghosts, and necromancy. She is often depicted with 3 faces, representing her dominion over the past, present, and future, or her presence at crossroads. You feel the mysterious power radiating from her, a sense of ancient primal magic. The Erotes, a collective of winged gods associated with love and sexual desire, are also prevalent. While Eros Cupid is the most famous, He has siblings and companions like Himeros, desire, and Pothos, longing. They are often depicted as playful, mischievous, and sometimes cruel in their aim. You feel the flutter of their wings, the capricious nature of love's arrow. Then there are the personifications of abstract concepts given divine form. Nyx night and Erebus darkness were among the first primordial beings. Their children include Hypnos, sleep, and Thanatos, death, both often depicted as winged figures, somber but necessary parts of the cosmic order. You feel the gentle descent of sleep, the quiet inevitability of death, embodied in these figures. Other personifications include Nemesis, retribution, Tyche luck, fortune, and Nike victory, whose presence often signals the outcome of events. Let's not forget the various monsters and strange creatures that heroes constantly encounter. We've seen the Hydra, the Chimera, a fire-breathing monster with the head of a lion, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail, the Lernaean Hydra, and the Sirens. There are also the Harpies, winged storm spirits with the bodies of birds and the faces of women, known for snatching food. The Minotaur we just encountered. The Sphinx, a winged lion with a woman's head, famous for posing riddles. Each monster serves a purpose, often representing chaos, danger, or a challenge for heroes to overcome. The ancient Greeks also believed in demons, daemons, not necessarily evil demons in the modern sense, but rather spirits or divine powers, often acting as intermediaries between gods and mortals. They could be good or bad, guiding or misleading. Socrates, for instance, famously spoke of his guiding demon. This concept adds another layer of unseen influence in the mythological world. The stories and roles of these lesser deities and spirits often highlight specific aspects of the natural world or human experience. They explain phenomena, give moral lessons, or simply add color and wonder to the mythological landscape. The ancient Greeks lived in a world where the divine was everywhere, not just on a distant mountaintop, but in every rustling leaf, every flowing stream, and every shifting shadow. You feel the pervasive presence of the supernatural, enriching the mundane world with magic and meaning. A quirky tidbit that demonstrates the interconnectedness of these beings. Many nymphs and satyrs are found in the retinue of specific Olympian gods. For instance, dryads and oreads often accompany Artemis on her hunts, while satyrs are almost always found in the revels of Dionysus. It's like finding specific subcultures within a larger society, each with their own unique style and hangout spots. They aren't just random figures. They have their own communities and allegiances within the divine hierarchy. That this deep and pervasive belief in lesser deities and nature spirits is a mainstream historical fact, illustrating the ancient Greek worldview. Their polytheistic system wasn't just about the main 12 Olympians. It was a rich, complex web of divine presences that touched every aspect of life. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of these local spirits and minor deities represents remnants of older pre-Olympian religious beliefs that were later integrated into the broader pantheon, or if they developed concurrently as a way to explain the vast diversity of natural phenomena. It's a fascinating thought, wasn't it? Did every village have its own local deity, who then got a cameo in a bigger epic? Or did the epic create the need for these local, relatable spirits? As you consider this myriad of beings, you realize that the world of Greek mythology is alive with 1,000 unseen eyes and whispering voices. Every rustle in the leaves, every ripple in the water, every shadow cast by the setting sun could be a sign of their presence. A reminder that the divine is never truly far. This intricate ecosystem of gods, mortals, and spirits creates a vibrant, compelling, and endlessly fascinating narrative landscape, where every corner holds a new story, a new encounter, and a new facet of the ancient Greek understanding of the universe. It's a world that invites you to look closer, to listen more intently, and to imagine the magic hidden just beyond the veil of the ordinary. You've just explored the rich and varied world of lesser deities and nature spirits, realizing that the mythological cosmos is far more populated and intricate than just Mount Olympus. Every natural feature, every abstract concept seems to have its own divine manifestation, adding layers of wonder and a pervasive sense of the sacred to the ancient Greek world. As you absorb this vast ecosystem of beings, it becomes clear that these myths are not merely ancient stories, but reflections of how a sophisticated civilization understood its universe, its values, and its very existence. Now, let's turn our attention to the lasting influence of Greek mythology on the modern world. You might think these stories are confined to dusty academic texts or ancient ruins, but you'd be mistaken. The truth is, Greek mythology is woven deeply into the fabric of our language, our art, our literature, our science, and even our daily lives. You'll be surprised at just how much of what you encounter today has its roots in the tales of gods, heroes, and monsters. It's like finding ancient Easter eggs hidden in plain sight, proving that these stories never truly died. They simply transformed. Let's start with language. English, in particular, is riddled with words and phrases derived directly from Greek mythology. You're probably using them without even realizing their ancient origins. Think of the word Atlas. Remember the Titan, Atlas, condemned to hold up the sky. A collection of maps is called an atlas because of the image of Atlas bearing the world on his shoulders. You picture him, forever straining, his burden now a symbol of cartographic knowledge. When someone has an Achilles heel, you know they have a fatal weakness, referring to the only vulnerable spot on the great warrior Achilles. If you describe someone as having Herculean strength, you're directly referencing the immense power of Hercules. You feel the weight of his labors just saying the word. A Midas touch refers to the ability to turn everything into gold, recalling King Midas, who wished for this power and regretted it when his food and even his daughter turned to gold. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of greed. A narcissist is someone excessively vain, named after Narcissus, a youth who fell in love with his own reflection and eventually wasted away. You see his tragic gaze, forever fixated on himself. A labyrinth is a complex, confusing maze, named after the structure built by Daedalus to contain the Minotaur. You feel the winding paths, the sense of being lost. Just hearing the word, the term echo comes from the nymph Echo, who was cursed to only repeat what others said after Hera punished her for distracting her while Zeus pursued other nymphs. You hear the faint reverberation, a ghostly whisper from the past. Pandora's box is now a common idiom for a source of extensive unforeseen troubles. You remember the chilling moment when all the evils were unleashed. A titan refers to something of immense size, strength, or importance, directly from the powerful primordial gods. Chaos itself, meaning utter disorder, comes from the primordial void from which everything emerged. This pervasive linguistic influence is a mainstream historical fact, demonstrating the deep impact of classical education and literature on Western culture. Historians still argue whether the widespread adoption of these mythological terms indicates a genuine, ongoing cultural appreciation for the myths, or if they simply became convenient linguistic shortcuts that lost some of their original narrative context over time. Beyond language, Greek mythology profoundly shapes our art and literature. From ancient Roman frescoes to Renaissance paintings, from neoclassical sculptures to modern novels and films, these stories have been endlessly retold, reinterpreted, and reimagined. You see the marble perfection of Michelangelo's David, a hero embodying the classical ideal derived from figures like Hercules and Perseus. You recall the dramatic canvases of Rubens, depicting gods and goddesses in all their human-like drama, their passions and their conflicts vividly brought to life. Countless poems, plays, and operas, like Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida or Offenbach's Orpheus in the underworld, directly adapt or draw inspiration from these myths. Even modern fantasy and superhero narratives often echo archetypal Greek heroic journeys and divine powers. The hero's journey archetype, famously outlined by Joseph Campbell, is fundamentally rooted in the structure of Greek heroic myths. The very concept of tragedy in Western theatre originates with Greek drama, deeply rooted in mythological narratives of fate, hubris, and suffering. You feel the profound emotional weight of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex or Aeschylus's Agamemnon, their themes still resonating today in science and astronomy. Greek mythology provides a rich wellspring for naming almost all of the planets in our solar system except Earth are named after Roman gods, who are direct counterparts to Greek gods, e.g. Jupiter, Zeus, Mars, Ares, Venus, Aphrodite, Neptune, Poseidon. Many constellations and celestial bodies bear the names of mythological figures. Orion, the hunter; Andromeda, the princess; Pegasus, the winged horse; Perseus, the hero. You gaze up at the night sky, seeing the myths etched in the stars. Even in biology, you find terms like arachnid, referring to spiders, from the myth of Arachne, a mortal weaver turned into a spider by Athena after she dared to challenge the goddess in a weaving contest. A quirky tidbit, Arachne's myth serves as a reminder that challenging the gods, even in a talent contest, was a very bad idea, demonstrating divine pettiness and human hubris in equal measure. The influence extends to popular culture in countless ways. Modern video games, movies think Clash of the Titans or Percy Jackson, and TV series frequently draw on Greek mythological themes, characters, and plotlines. You see the heroes wielding their swords, the monsters roaring, the gods intervening, all echoes of ancient tales. Even advertising uses mythological references to evoke grandeur, power, or beauty. Think of Venus razors or Nike sportswear. The athletic brand Nike is literally named after the Greek goddess of victory. You sense the triumph in her name. Furthermore, Greek mythology played a crucial role in the development of Western thought and philosophy. The myths often provided a framework for understanding the human condition, morality, and the nature of the universe before formalized philosophical inquiry took over. They served as a cultural bedrock, a shared narrative that informed ethical debates and societal norms. The questioning of these myths by philosophers like Plato and Socrates actually helped pave the way for rational thought. But the myths themselves were the starting point. The concept of the Olympic Games, a mainstream historical fact, directly ties into Greek reverence for the gods and athletic prowess. While the modern Olympics are secular, their name and spirit harken back to the ancient games held in honor of Zeus at Olympia. You feel the competitive spirit, the pursuit of excellence, rooted in those ancient festivals, even in architecture. The classical styles of ancient Greece, deeply influenced by their religious beliefs and mythologies, continue to inspire. The majestic columns and harmonious proportions of Greek temples, designed to honor the gods, are echoed in government buildings, museums, and grand structures around the world. You stand before a neoclassical building, recognizing the timeless aesthetic principles that were first conceived to house the divine. The enduring power of Greek mythology lies in its archetypal themes and characters. These stories delve into universal human experiences: love and loss, pride and humility, courage and cowardice, fate and free will, justice and vengeance. The gods, with their human-like flaws and passions, are relatable despite their immortality and immense power. They serve as magnified reflections of humanity, allowing us to explore our own virtues and vices on a grand cosmic scale. This widespread and continuous influence is a mainstream historical fact, demonstrating the enduring power of narrative and the foundational role of classical antiquity in the development of Western civilization. Historians still argue whether the rebirth of interest in Greek and Roman mythology during the Renaissance and subsequent periods was primarily an artistic and intellectual movement, or if it also reflected deeper societal shifts that found resonance in the classical world's emphasis on humanism and rational inquiry. It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Did we just appreciate the stories, or did we subconsciously adopt their worldview? As you reflect on this pervasive influence, you realize that the world of Greek mythology is not a closed book of ancient tales. It is a living, breathing narrative that continues to inspire, inform, and shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Every time you use a word like Herculean, or see a constellation named after a hero, or recognize a classic plot twist in a modern film, you are connecting with the echoes of Mount Olympus, the whispers of the underworld, and the timeless adventures of heroes. These stories, born from the imaginations of the ancient Greeks, have truly achieved a form of immortality, continuing to resonate across millennia, proving that a good story, truly well told, never really dies. You've just journeyed through the profound influence of Greek mythology on our modern world, discovering its hidden presence in our language, art, and even the stars above. It's a powerful testament to the enduring human fascination with these ancient tales, proving that stories, when they tap into universal truths, truly can achieve a kind of immortality. But even as we acknowledge their lasting legacy, we must also return to the narratives themselves, for the tapestry of Greek myth is vast and intricate, with countless threads yet to explore. While we've focused on the most prominent Olympians and the grand, universe-shaping conflicts like the Titanomachy and the Trojan War, the Greek mythological landscape is populated by numerous other significant figures. These are gods and goddesses, who, though perhaps not part of the core 12, wield considerable power, embody crucial concepts, or play pivotal roles in specific narratives. You realize that the divine family tree is far more sprawling than you first imagined, with complex relationships and fascinating backstories for almost every branch. Let's expand our understanding of the Olympian supporting cast, starting with some of the children of Zeus, often born from his numerous affairs, divine and mortal, which, as you know, frequently led to Hera's legendary wrath. Consider Hebe, the goddess of youth and cupbearer to the gods on Olympus. You picture her, a radiant, youthful figure, serving ambrosia and nectar to the assembled deities. She embodies eternal youth and vitality, a charming but often understated presence. Interestingly, she eventually marries Hercules after he achieves immortality, a fitting reward for the hero who suffered so much. Then there's Eilithyia, goddess of childbirth, a role that often put her in conflict with Hera, especially when Hera was trying to prevent the birth of Zeus's illegitimate children. You feel the pain and triumph of birth, understanding her vital, if sometimes manipulated, role. She is often seen as a minor attendant of Hera, sometimes even identified with Hera herself in this specific function. Persephone, as we touched upon earlier, is a key figure. You remember her as the innocent daughter of Demeter, abducted by Hades to be his queen. Her dual role as goddess of spring and queen of the underworld makes her a profoundly significant deity, symbolizing the cycle of life, death, and renewal. You feel the transition from vibrant bloom to somber decay, embodied in her annual journey. Her story is central to the Eleusinian Mysteries, one of the most important religious cults in ancient Greece, a mainstream historical fact that indicates her deep religious significance. Historians still argue whether the Persephone myth primarily served to explain the seasons, or if it was an elaborate allegorical narrative for spiritual death and rebirth experienced by initiates in the mysteries. We also have Eos, the goddess of the dawn. You see her, a beautiful winged figure with rosy fingers, bringing the sunrise each day, her chariots drawn by 2 horses, Lampus and Phaethon. She is a constant presence, the silent usher of day, But her own myths often involve tragic love affairs with mortals, who she would carry off to be her lovers. And of course, Helios, the Titan god of the sun, while Apollo is later associated with the sun. In earlier myths, Helios is the one who drives the chariot of the sun across the sky each day, bringing light to the world. You feel the warmth of his golden rays, the power of the sun personified. His most famous story involves his son, Phaethon, who disastrously tried to drive the sun chariot himself, nearly scorching the earth. This myth serves as a powerful cautionary tale against hubris and the dangers of wielding power beyond one's capability. On the lunar side, we have Selene, the Titan goddess of the moon, often depicted driving a silver chariot pulled by two white horses or oxen. Like Helios, she predates Artemis in her role as a lunar deity, though Artemis later assumes many of her functions. You feel the cool, gentle glow of the moonlight, the quiet mystery of the night sky. Her love affair with the mortal Endymion, whom Zeus put into an eternal sleep so Selene could visit him forever, is a poignant tale of eternal love and frozen time. Beyond the direct children of the Olympians, there are other ancient deities who hold considerable sway. Pan, the goat-footed god of wild nature, shepherds, flocks, rustic music, and impromptu musical revelry. You hear the enchanting, yet sometimes unsettling, sound of his pipes, the very origin of the word panic. He is a mischievous and lustful figure, often associated with nymphs and the untamed wilderness. He's the embodiment of wild, untamed nature, both beautiful and terrifying. Nemesis, the goddess of divine retribution, personifying the indignation or vengeance of the gods against human hubris, excessive pride, and wickedness. You feel the cold hand of justice, the inescapable consequence of arrogance. She is the ultimate score settler, ensuring that no one escapes the consequences of their actions. Tyche, the goddess of luck, fortune, providence, and destiny. She is often depicted with a rudder, symbolizing her control over destiny, and a cornucopia, symbolizing abundance. You feel the fickle hand of fate, the random twists of good or bad luck that shape human lives. She is a reminder that not everything is in the gods' or heroes' control. The Muses are 9 goddesses who inspire literature, science, and the arts. They are the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory. Each muse presides over a specific art or science. Calliope, epic poetry; Clio, history; Erato, lyric poetry; Euterpe, music; Melpomene, tragedy; Polyhymnia, sacred poetry; Terpsichore, dance; Thalia, comedy; and Urania, astronomy. You feel the spark of creativity, the flow of inspiration, understanding their vital role in human, artistic, and intellectual endeavors. They are the patrons of human genius, quietly guiding and inspiring. Another set of crucial figures are the Hoary Hours, goddesses of the seasons and natural order, often associated with justice and good governance. They guard the gates of Olympus, and are often depicted as beautiful young women. They represent the ordered cycles of nature and society, adding structure to the wildness of the cosmos. You also find powerful primordial deities, who, though not Olympians, embody fundamental forces, and are sometimes appealed to. For example, Nyx Night is a primeval goddess of incredible power, older than Zeus himself. Even Zeus is said to respect and fear her. You feel the profound, ancient darkness she embodies, a force that existed before the light. The Fates, in Greek, are perhaps the most powerful of all, even more so than the Olympians themselves. You feel a shiver of dread as you consider their power. There are 3 of them. Clotho, the spinner, spins the thread of human life, determining when a person is born. Lachesis, the apportioner, measures the thread, determining the length and destiny of one's life. Atropos, the unturnable, cuts the thread, signifying the moment of death. Even Zeus cannot change the decrees of the fates. They represent the unalterable destiny that governs gods and mortals alike. The ultimate, inescapable power in the cosmos. You feel the chilling certainty of their purpose, the profound finality of their scissors. Their existence is a mainstream historical fact in the mythological understanding of destiny, underpinning countless narratives where fate trumps even divine will. Historians still argue whether the concept of the fates reflects a pessimistic view of human agency in ancient Greek society, or if it provided comfort by suggesting a preordained, albeit unchangeable, order to the universe. Let's not forget the various sea gods and nymphs. Beyond Poseidon and there is Proteus, the old man of the sea, a shape-shifting deity who knows all things, past, present, and future, but is notoriously difficult to capture and forced to reveal his knowledge. And Triton, Poseidon's son, a merman with a conch-shell trumpet, whose blast can calm or raise the waves. You hear the deep call of his shell, echoing across the vast oceans, the concept of heroes themselves. While we've covered prominent figures like Hercules and Odysseus, is a broader category that includes countless local figures, minor adventurers, and demigods whose tales, while perhaps not as globally recognized, were deeply significant to specific regions or city-states. These heroes often embody the virtues and struggles of their communities, providing role models and explanations for local landmarks or customs. This rich array of figures illustrates the ancient Greek understanding of a universe teeming with divine presence, a world where every natural phenomenon, every human emotion, and every aspect of fate had a powerful, often anthropomorphic, representation. It's a universe where the lines between the natural and the supernatural are constantly blurred, where the gods, the spirits, and the forces of destiny are always present, influencing the lives of mortals in countless subtle and overt ways. A quirky tidbit that often goes unnoticed. Many of these lesser deities actually had cults and worship sites dedicated to them, sometimes more local and intimate than the grand temples to the Olympians. For instance, springs would have shrines to naiads, and particular mountains to oreads. This highlights that the ancient Greek religion was incredibly decentralized and deeply integrated into the local landscape, a reflection of their immediate environment being infused with the divine. It's not just about the big names, it's about the everyday sacredness of the world around them. As you step back and view this comprehensive pantheon, you gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity and richness of Greek mythology. It's not just a collection of disconnected stories, but a vast, interconnected worldview where every god, every spirit, every monster, and every human plays a part in a grand, cosmic drama. And in this drama, the line between god and mortal is often surprisingly thin, with heroes rising to divine status and gods behaving with startlingly human flaws. The universe, in their eyes, was a vibrant, perilous, and utterly captivating place, alive with myriad powers and possibilities. You've delved deep into the sprawling network of Greek mythological figures, moving beyond the main Olympians to discover the myriad of lesser deities, spirits, and personifications that imbue every corner of the ancient Greek world with divine presence. This intricate web of beings, from the nature-bound nymphs to the unyielding fates, paints a picture of a universe where the supernatural is not just a distant concept, but an ever-present force, subtly and overtly shaping the lives of gods and mortals alike. It's like discovering that your everyday world is actually a giant, fantastical ecosystem teeming with unseen magic. As we move toward the culmination of our journey, it's important to reflect on the philosophical and moral lessons embedded within Greek mythology. These stories are not merely fantastical adventures. They are profound explorations of human nature, destiny, justice, and the often fraught relationship between mortals and the divine. The myths served as a cultural mirror, reflecting the values, fears, and aspirations of the ancient Greeks, and offering frameworks for understanding their place in a vast, often chaotic, cosmos. You realize that these aren't just bedtime stories. They're ancient parables, designed to make you think. One of the most pervasive and defining themes in Greek mythology is the concept of fate or destiny. You've seen it repeatedly. Prophecies that come true despite attempts to avert them. King Hercules and Perseus, Kronos and Zeus, and the unalterable decrees of the fates that even Zeus cannot defy. This suggests a powerful, predetermined order to the universe, where even the most powerful gods are subject to a higher, more fundamental law. You feel the weight of this inevitability, the sense that certain outcomes are simply meant to be. This contrasts sharply with modern notions of complete free will, offering a fascinating glimpse into an ancient worldview.